Hey guys, tonight we're stepping back in time to a world where a carefully chosen carrot could be more powerful than a love letter, and a spiced wine might just have been the medieval equivalent of a dating app. You're about to wander through the dimly lit halls of medieval courts, where knights and ladies, kings and queens secretly dabbled in the delicious and sometimes dubious art of culinary aphrodisiacs. Imagine dining in a great hall, the air thick with the scent of roasted meats and exotic spices, not knowing if the dish before you is merely a meal or a covert attempt to ignite a spark of passion, or perhaps a full-blown inferno. It's a fascinating, often humorous dive into how people tried to cook up love in an era before Tinder or whispered sweet nothings were the only options. Now, I'm not gonna lie, some of these historical dishes might make you glad you live in an age of readily available takeout, because you probably won't survive some of the ingredients or the medieval hygiene standards. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're joining us for a bit of historical relaxation, let me know where you are and what time it is in the comments. It's always fun to see how far these sleepy stories travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself transported to a medieval castle kitchen, a bustling, smoky hub of activity. Imagine the clatter of pots, the sizzle of fat, and the low murmur of cooks preparing elaborate feasts. But amidst the mundane preparations, there's a subtle undercurrent, a whisper of intent beyond mere sustenance. For centuries, across cultures and continents, certain foods, herbs, and concoctions were believed to hold the power to stir the heart, to awaken desire, and to bind lovers together. These weren't just old wives' tales. In the medieval period, the belief in culinary magic was interwoven with medicine, astrology, and even religious practices. It was an age when the line between science and superstition was, shall we say, a bit blurry, much like trying to read a menu written in Old English after a long day. Think of it. You're a noble, perhaps a knight or a lady of the court, tasked with securing a beneficial marriage alliance. Love, as we understand it today, was often a secondary consideration. Duty, land, and lineage were the main course, with affection merely a side dish, if it appeared at all. So what do you do when the heart you need to win feels as impenetrable as the castle walls? You turn to every available tool, and in the medieval pantry, that often meant aphrodisiacs. These weren't just about fleeting passion, they were about influencing destiny, about gently nudging someone's emotions in the right direction, or, in some cases, giving them a shove. The term aphrodisiac itself whispers of antiquity, deriving from Aphrodite, the Greek goddess of love, beauty, pleasure, and procreation. This connection highlights that the concept wasn't born in the medieval era. Rather, it was a continuation, a reinterpretation of ancient beliefs. Just as people in ancient Rome might have crushed certain roots or concocted strange brews, their medieval descendants followed suit, often with even more peculiar ingredients. You might wonder, was it the actual properties of the food, or simply the power of suggestion? Historians still argue whether the psychological effect of believing a food was potent was more impactful than any inherent chemical properties. Either way, the faith in these edible enchantments was, for many, as real as the stone walls around them. You're looking not just at food, but at hope, fear, and a desperate desire for control, all served on a platter. Consider a story from the more, shall we say, robust side of historical romance. Eleanor Herman's Sex with Kings, a delightfully direct title, don't you think? Offers a peek into the intimate lives of European royalty. You'd find accounts of King Henry IV of France, known for his prodigious appetites both at the table and elsewhere. It's said he consumed copious amounts of garlic before visiting his mistress, Gabrielle d'Estrées, believing it to be a powerful aphrodisiac. Now, while the garlic might have been potent, one has to wonder about the after effects of such a potent breath on romantic encounters. Perhaps it was a test of true love. If you could endure the garlic, you truly cared. This tidbit perfectly illustrates the blend of belief, desperation, and rather unromantic practicalities that often accompany these attempts at culinary magic. You're still there, aren't you? Drifting through the medieval kitchen, perhaps a subtle hint of roasted garlic lingers in the air, a testament to King Henry IV's rather bold romantic gestures. As you inhale, let's travel even further back, because the medieval fascination with edible passion didn't simply materialize out of thin air. It had deep roots in classical antiquity. Imagine ancient Rome, a society that, let's just say, wasn't known for its shyness. Here, aphrodisiacs weren't just a quirky culinary trend. They were woven into the very fabric of social life, banquets, and even religious rites. The Romans, with their penchant for opulence and excess, truly elevated the consumption of love-inducing foods to an art form, a sort of gastronomic foreplay before the main event. You might be envisioning toga-clad figures reclining at a symposium, delicately popping grapes, but the reality was often far more earthy. Think about the oyster, for instance. Even today, it holds a reputation as a potent aphrodisiac, a legacy directly inherited from Roman belief. Why? Well, beyond the scientific theories of zinc content, the sheer sensory experience of an oyster, its slippery texture, its briny taste, its perceived connection to the sea and Venus, the goddess of love, made it an ideal candidate. You'd find Roman elites consuming them by the dozens, perhaps with a quiet wink across the table. It was less about discreet magic and more about a cultural understanding that certain foods simply unlocked something within. A quirky tidbit: the Roman Emperor Vitellius, famous for his gluttony, was said to consume oysters in truly astonishing quantities, perhaps hoping for a perpetual state of romantic readiness. Or maybe he just really liked oysters. Historians still argue whether such prodigious consumption was for pleasure, performance, or merely a display of wealth. Beyond the oyster, the ancients believed in the power of anything that resembled the body's more, shall we say, procreative parts. Foods like asparagus, artichokes, and even certain types of mushrooms were prized not just for their taste, but for their suggestive shapes. You can almost hear the giggling in the kitchens as these phallic or womb-like vegetables were prepared, each chop and slice an unspoken promise. It's a bit like buying a car purely because it looks fast, even if it has an engine from a lawnmower. The symbolism was as important as any perceived chemical property. The Erotic Spirit Through History by Peter Webb, while broad in its scope, touches upon the Roman concept of luxuria, a term often translated as luxury or extravagance, but which also carried connotations of sensual indulgence and even moral laxity. In this context, aphrodisiacs weren't merely about stimulating desire, but about embracing a whole lifestyle of pleasure and heightened sensation. You weren't just eating to feel more amorous. You were eating to fully experience the richness of life, including its sensual aspects. It was a philosophy served with every course. Consider another fascinating aspect: the use of spices and exotic ingredients. The Romans, with their vast empire and trade routes, had access to a cornucopia of foreign delights. Cinnamon, cloves, and ginger, once rare and expensive, were believed to possess warming qualities that could ignite inner fires. Imagine the sheer novelty of these ingredients. If you'd only ever eaten bland porridge, a pinch of exotic cinnamon would feel like a literal explosion of flavor, surely capable of conjuring any number of magical effects. It's the ancient equivalent of believing a new, while expensive superfood will solve all your problems: health, wealth, and yes, your love life. This reliance on imported ingredients created a direct lineage to medieval practices. When the Roman Empire declined, much of this culinary knowledge and the trade routes that supplied the spices were disrupted. But the memory of their power persisted, often becoming shrouded in even more mystery and folklore. You can imagine whispered tales of ancient Roman feasts, where secret herbs from distant lands transformed timid lovers into passionate paramours, fueling the medieval imagination and setting the stage for their own culinary experiments. It's like a recipe passed down through generations, with each cook adding their own peculiar twist, often without fully understanding the original measurements. You're witnessing the slow, organic evolution of a culinary belief. From imperial excess to monastic gardens, each era leaving its unique flavorful mark. So, you've journeyed from the Roman banquets, where oysters and oddly shaped vegetables were all the rage, and now you're back in the medieval court, where whispers of these ancient practices still echo. But what truly set the medieval culinary aphrodisiac scene apart, giving it a distinct flavor, was the explosion of spices and desire. Imagine the vast, mysterious lands of the East, far beyond the familiar European horizons. From these distant shores came cinnamon, cloves, nutmeg, ginger, and black pepper, not just flavor enhancers, but perceived bearers of potent, almost magical properties. These weren't merely condiments, they were treasures, valued often more than gold, and their scarcity only heightened their mystique. You see, for the medieval mind, anything rare and exotic held inherent power. If a pinch of pepper could make bland stew exciting, imagine what it could do for a flagging libido. Spices were believed to possess warming qualities, to ignite internal fires, and to stimulate the humors, those vital bodily fluids that medieval medicine believed governed everything from mood to amorous inclination. If your humors were balanced and warm, well, you were probably in for a good time. A quirky tidbit, ginger, specifically, was often recommended for its heating properties, believed to not only warm the body, but also stir romantic ardor. It's a bit like believing that wearing a very expensive designer coat will automatically make you irresistible. The belief in the inherent value of the item transferred to its perceived effect. Take the insights from Michel Foucault's The History of Sexuality, which, while often focusing on later periods, provides a framework for understanding how societies construct and perceive desire. In the medieval context, the exoticism of spices contributed to their perceived erotic power, not just through their physical effects, but through the symbolism of their origins. To consume a spice from distant India or the Spice Islands was to ingest a piece of that far-off, alluring world, perhaps imbuing the consumer with a similar sense of mystery and allure. It was less about chemical reactions and more about a holistic, almost mystical understanding of ingredients. You weren't just eating a spice, you were consuming an idea. Consider for a moment the cost. These spices weren't sitting in a superstore aisle for a couple of dollars. They traversed treacherous land and sea routes, passing through countless hands, each adding to the price. To serve a dish heavily spiced was not only a statement of wealth, but also a display of power. Look at me. I can afford to sprinkle pure gold dust on my pigeon pie. And yes, it's probably helping my love life too. This ostentatious display itself could be a form of seduction, a visual aphrodisiac as potent as any ingested one. It's the medieval equivalent of pulling up to the castle gates in a brand new, gleaming carriage. Quite a statement, don't you think? One authentic story from Eleanor Herman's Sex with Kings, yes, we're back to that wonderfully candid source, details how royal chefs were constantly tasked with devising new and exciting dishes, not just to please palates, but to boost flagging royal libidos. Imagine the pressure. If the king wasn't performing, was it the chef's fault for not adding enough nutmeg to the custard? It's easy to picture a medieval chef hunched over a bubbling pot, muttering incantations not just for flavor, but for results. This shows that the belief wasn't just held by the common folk. It permeated the highest levels of society, where dynastic continuation often hinged on successful procreation. Historians still argue whether the actual physiological effects of these spices were genuinely recognized, or if the perceived aphrodisiac qualities were primarily due to the placebo effect and the social context of their consumption. Was it the warming property of ginger, or the expectation that it should work? Perhaps a bit of both. You're left pondering how much of human desire is truly inherent, and how much is influenced by belief, expectation, and a generous sprinkling of cinnamon. It's a thought to chew on, perhaps with a spiced medieval biscuit, as you drift deeper into the past. As the fragrant aroma of cinnamon and ginger fades into the ancient stones of the medieval kitchen, you might find yourself wondering, were these exotic spices the only secret weapons in the courtly pursuit of passion? Not by a long shot. The medieval world was brimming with natural remedies, and many of these involved herbal potions' power. Imagine a wizened apothecary, perhaps in a quiet, secluded corner of the castle, their hands calloused from years of working with the earth's bounty. You can almost see them now, meticulously grinding roots and leaves, crushing petals, and mixing them into dark, swirling concoctions believed to ignite not just love, but something far more potent, an unwavering, almost inescapable desire. The air in their small workshop would be thick with the earthy scent of drying herbs, perhaps a faint metallic tang from aged grinding tools. You see, while spices were about warmth and stimulation, certain herbs were thought to possess more direct, almost magical influences on the body and mind. Consider mandrake root. This notorious plant, with its vaguely human-like shape, often resembling a small, gnarled person, was steeped in folklore and superstition. It was believed to shriek agonizingly when pulled from the earth, and its supposed aphrodisiac qualities were legendary. If you could get your hands on a piece and survive the imagined soul-piercing scream, you might painstakingly grind it into a fine powder, mix it into wine, or perhaps a sweet cordial, and then, with bated breath, offer it to your intended, hoping for a love that would never ever fade. Of course, mandrake is also highly toxic, containing tropane alkaloids that can cause hallucinations, coma, or even death. So you were playing a rather high-stakes game of medieval romance, a bit like trying a risky, unverified DIY hack you saw on social media, hoping for a magical transformation without, checking the actual safety warnings or consulting a qualified professional. The potential for a romantic evening to turn into an emergency room visit was, shall we say, non-zero. The Kama Sutra, while not a medieval European text and hailing from a vastly different cultural context, offers a fascinating contrast in its approach to herbal remedies and physical enhancement. It discusses various preparations designed to enhance virility and pleasure, but often within a broader context of physical well-being, overall health, and a holistic understanding of the body's natural rhythms. In medieval Europe, however, the focus shifted more strongly towards compulsion and influence when it came to love magic. It wasn't just about making oneself more attractive or physically capable. It was often about bending another's will, about securing a love that might not have been freely given. This difference is subtle but significant. You're moving from self-improvement and mutual pleasure to a form of quiet, often desperate, and sometimes unethical manipulation. A quirky tidbit that highlights this desperate and controlling side: certain medieval texts, unearthed by diligent historians, mention the use of verbena, or vervain, as an herb specifically used to bind love. It wasn't just about making someone fall in love with you initially, but about ensuring they stayed in love. Almost like an invisible, unbreakable chain binding their heart to yours. You might subtly sprinkle powdered verbena into a lover's drink, or even sew it into their clothing, hoping to secure their fidelity and prevent their affections from wandering. This practice powerfully illustrates a profound insecurity, a pervasive fear of abandonment that permeated medieval society, especially given the precariousness of life, the transient nature of alliances, and the fragile emotional landscape of many relationships. Historians still argue whether the primary motivation for such binding spells was a genuine, albeit misguided, desire for true affection, or a deep-seated, practical need for social and economic security that a stable, enduring relationship could provide. Perhaps it was a complex blend of both, inextricably intertwined in the fabric of medieval daily life and desire. Eleanor Herman's Sex with Kings. Yes, we simply can't seem to escape her wonderfully candid and illuminating accounts, can we? Also touches on the often dangerous and ethically dubious lengths to which powerful individuals, even royalty, would go to secure their romantic and political desires. Think of Catherine de' Medici, the notorious Queen of France, whose reputation is shrouded in a captivating mix of political intrigue, ambition, and a rumored interest in potions and poisons. While much of her involvement in such dark concoctions is probably exaggerated or shrouded in myth, the mere whisper of her dabbling in such forbidden arts speaks volumes to the era's widespread belief that powerful individuals could and would use any means necessary to secure their desires, whether those desires were romantically passionate or coldly political. You can almost smell the strange, simmering brews from her private, heavily guarded chambers, concocted with ingredients whispered to have untold power, perhaps designed to ensure the loyalty of a lover or the compliance of a rival. But it wasn't just exotic or dangerously potent herbs that filled the medieval love magician's toolkit. Everyday plants found in local fields, humble gardens, and even growing wild along dusty roadsides were also imbued with romantic or protective properties. Rosemary, for instance, with its fragrant pine-like aroma, was widely associated with remembrance, fidelity, and constancy. You might wear a sprig of it, subtly tucked into your clothing, or add a few carefully chosen leaves to a dish prepared for a loved one, hoping to ensure their enduring loyalty and that their affection for you would never fade. Thyme, too, often found growing in sunny patches, was thought to inspire courage, strength, and yes, passion. These more innocuous, readily available herbs show a softer, perhaps more hopeful side of medieval love magic, a belief in gentle nudges rather than forceful, potentially harmful enchantments. It's the subtle difference between a heartfelt whispered suggestion and a literal, desperate shove. You can truly sense the sheer variety of approaches, more from the terrifying and toxic mandrake to the comforting and symbolic rosemary, all driven by the same profound and universal human desire to master the elusive, often frustrating force of love. The medieval individual, lacking a modern understanding of chemistry, psychology, or even basic pharmacology, attributed immense, almost sentient power to the natural world around them, transforming common plants into tools of destiny, hope, and sometimes unfortunate demise. And as you feel yourself drifting further into this historical dreamscape, perhaps a faint, comforting scent of rosemary now mingles with the lingering spices, you begin to understand that even the most peculiar medieval practices were rooted in very familiar human hopes and fears, echoing across the centuries right into our own complicated lives. Having explored the sometimes perilous power of herbal potions, your imagination now takes you directly into the very heart of medieval culinary ambition, the royal kitchen secrets. Here, within the bustling, often chaotic confines of a king's or queen's kitchen, the pursuit of edible aphrodisiacs wasn't merely a personal indulgence. It was a matter of state, intertwined with the very lineage and stability of the realm. Imagine the enormous hearths, constantly ablaze with roaring fires, casting dancing shadows on the stone walls, the spits tirelessly turning whole oxen and wild boar, and the air thick with the rich, savory aromas of 1,000 different ingredients mingling together. But amidst this grand theatrical display of wealth, power, and abundance, the master chefs, often under intense, unspoken pressure, were discreetly tasked with a crucial, almost sacred mission to ensure the monarch's vigor, vitality, and, by direct extension, the uninterrupted continuation of the royal dynasty. You're standing amidst towering copper pots gleaming dimly in the firelight, and vast, worn wooden tables laden with freshly prepared meats, vegetables, and exotic fruits. You watch as scullions scurry with swift practiced movements, carrying heavy buckets and scrubbing monstrous cauldrons, while the master chefs direct their teams with sharp, precise commands, their faces often streaked with soot and sweat. But what truly sets these royal kitchens apart from any common households is the array of strange and exotic ingredients that would occasionally, almost furtively, find their way into the most intimate and special of dishes. Forget your humble parsley or common cabbage. Think rather of the more outlandish components, driven by a fascinating blend of ancient folklore, nascent pseudoscience, and sheer, unwavering desperation for an heir. A truly quirky tidbit, one that might make your modern eyebrows raise, is the belief in the aphrodisiac power of powdered unicorn horn. Of course, it wasn't actually from unicorns. Those mythical, elusive creatures were, surprisingly, notoriously hard to come by, even for a king, but it was usually derived from ground narwhal tusk. Nevertheless, the unwavering belief in its mystical potency and its rarity made it an incredibly expensive and highly prized ingredient for royal menus, reserved for moments of utmost dynastic importance, or perhaps periods of utmost amorous ambition. It was the ultimate, luxurious, and completely unverified performance enhancer of its day. Eleanor Herman's wonderfully candid book, Sex with Kings, provides fascinating anecdotes that vividly illuminate this very point, bringing these historical figures to life. She recounts how monarchs' appetites, both for sumptuous food and for intimate relations, were intrinsically linked in the medieval mind to their perceived power and the very stability of their kingdoms. A king's virility was not just a personal matter of pride, it was a potent symbol of his kingdom's strength, his divine favor, and his ability to secure the future. Thus, royal chefs were under immense, unspoken pressure to deliver results, often resorting to ingredients that sounded more like a witch's brew from a dark fairy tale than a gourmet meal fit for a king. You might, If you listen closely to the whispered rumors in the castle corridors, hear of pulverized precious gems being secretly incorporated into sweet pastries, or exotic bird brains or other unsettling animal parts being discreetly mixed into rich stews. It's a bit like a medieval version of a highly competitive, high-stakes cooking show, but with much, much higher stakes, like the survival of a dynasty and potentially toxic ingredients that could send a less robust monarch to an early grave. The next royal heir might quite literally depend on that peculiar pudding or the strangely textured meat pie. The historical understanding of desire and sexuality, as profoundly explored by thinkers like Michel Foucault, reminds us that sexuality, even for those at the pinnacle of royalty, was never purely a private, individual affair. It was constantly being defined, meticulously managed, openly discussed, and indeed subtly produced through intricate social norms, rigid religious doctrine, and yes, even these peculiar royal culinary practices. The food served in court was therefore not just simple sustenance. It was a carefully curated performance, a symbolic offering, sometimes explicitly designed to influence the very desires and capabilities of those at the very top of the social hierarchy. You can practically feel the immense weight of expectation resting on every single dish, the unspoken hopes and fears resting on each bite taken by the monarch. Consider the notion of these signature dishes that were specifically intended to enhance the royal libido and ensure procreation. Imagine a master chef, perhaps an earnest, anxious individual, meticulously preparing a rich pigeon stew, but instead of typical commonplace herbs, he's incorporating ingredients whispered to be powerful stimulants, perhaps sparrow brains, based on the bizarre medieval belief that consuming parts of a creature would imbue one with its characteristics, thus making one as amorous and prolific as a sparrow, or the finely ground testicles of various strong, virile animals. While these might sound utterly unappetizing, even revolting to your modern palate, for the medieval royal, desperate for an heir, or simply striving to maintain an image of unwavering potency and vigor, no ingredient was considered too strange, no method too unconventional. It's a compelling testament to how deeply the belief in culinary aphrodisiacs permeated royal life, influencing even the most intimate and personal aspects of a monarch's existence and future. Historians still argue vehemently whether these peculiar and often dangerous ingredients genuinely had any actual physiological effect on libido or fertility, or if their perceived power was almost entirely psychological, a potent blend of expectation, the powerful placebo effect, and the sheer social and economic context of their consumption. Was it truly the incredibly expensive ground narwhal horn that worked its magic, or simply the king's unwavering belief that it should work, combined with the sheer extravagance and symbolic power of its cost and rarity? You might ponder, as you drift deeper into this historical reverie, how many times a shrewd royal chef secretly substituted a less expensive yet equally symbolically potent ingredient, relying entirely on the powerful placebo effect and the monarch's deep-seated faith in the magic of such a dish. It makes you wonder what truly nourished their desires, the questionable food itself, or the elaborate charade and fervent belief surrounding it. It remains a fascinating mystery, subtly baked into the very history of royal dining and the desperate quest for control over love and progeny. As the last whispers of exotic, pulverized unicorn horn fade from the opulent royal kitchens, leaving behind perhaps a faint, lingering scent of desperate ambition, you might find yourself longing for something a little less mythical, and perhaps a great deal more palatable. Fortunately, the medieval pursuit of passion and procreation also wholeheartedly embraced ingredients far more common, yet no less revered for their supposed amorous powers. And chief among these, glistening with golden sticky promise and a natural sweetness, was honey. Imagine, if you will, gently drifting through a sun-drenched medieval garden on a warm summer's afternoon, listening to the incessant, industrious hum of bees, their tireless work providing nature's purest sweetener. Honey wasn't merely a delightful treat for the medieval palate. It was a potent medicine, a crucial preservative for food, and, most importantly in this context, a cherished symbol of love, fertility, and even divine grace. Its presence was as ubiquitous as it was valued, from the humblest peasant's cottage to the most lavish king's banquet table. You're now finding yourself drifting through a quiet, cool medieval pantry, perhaps, where sturdy earthenware pots of honey stand proudly alongside vast wooden barrels of fermenting mead. For the medieval mind, honey's very existence, its rich, golden essence, painstakingly derived from countless blossoms and infused with the very spirit of the earth, linked it directly to concepts of fecundity, natural abundance, and the mysterious cycles of life. It was widely seen as life-giving, a concentrated form of nature's most potent bounty, capable of bestowing vitality upon those who consumed it. This profound belief wasn't new or unique to the medieval era. Indeed, ancient cultures across the globe, from the sophisticated Egyptians to the philosophical Greeks and the powerful Romans, had revered honey for its purported health benefits, its remarkable longevity, and its undeniable connection to virility and overall vitality. The medieval era simply continued and expanded upon this venerable tradition, often imbuing honey with even more specific and mystical romantic properties. It's a bit like discovering that your beloved grandmother's secret recipe for her famously delicious cookies also apparently holds the key to finding true love. A delightful bonus, wouldn't you agree? Consider, for example, the widespread and deeply ingrained practice of newlyweds consuming copious amounts of mead, a sweet, fermented honey drink, for a full lunar cycle, or approximately 30 days, immediately following their wedding ceremony. This ancient custom is, in fact, precisely where the term honeymoon quite literally originates. You'd find these newlywed couples, often still blushing and perhaps a little awkward with their new marital status, sipping this sweet, slightly intoxicating beverage throughout the month, not just for simple celebration, but with the explicit and fervent hope that it would encourage conception and bless their new union with fruitfulness, ensuring the swift arrival of many healthy children. It wasn't just a casual toast or a celebratory drink. It was a profound ritual, a heartfelt plea to the powers that be, whether divine or natural, for a large, prosperous, and healthy family. You can almost imagine the gentle, slightly tipsy conversations filled with tender hopes for future offspring, all believed to be made possible by the humble, industrious bee and its golden offering. A truly quirky tidbit that further illustrates the medieval fascination with honey's symbolic and magical power. Beyond just direct consumption, honey was sometimes cleverly utilized in forms of sympathetic magic, where a desired effect was believed to be achieved by mimicking it. You might find a lover's name carefully written on a small piece of parchment, perhaps illuminated with tiny gilded flourishes along its edges, then meticulously dipped in honey and carefully hidden away in a secret place, with the sincere belief that just as the sweet, sticky honey clung tenaciously to the parchment, so too would the beloved cling irrevocably to the caster, their affections bound forever. It's a rather sweet and charming form of binding spell, isn't it? Far less alarming and certainly more pleasant than those involving, say, shrieking mandrake root or dubious animal parts, don't you think? This particular practice speaks to a softer, more endearing and poetic side of medieval love magic, one rooted deeply in romantic symbolism rather than crude force or fear. The Erotic Spirit Through History by Peter Webb, while a broad exploration of sensuality across different epochs, delves into how various cultures, including the medieval, profoundly perceived sweetness and its intimate connection to sensuality and pleasure. In the harsh, often bitter medieval context, where bitter flavors were frequently associated with illness, sorrow, or religious penance, sweetness was almost universally seen as inherently pleasurable, wonderfully indulgent, and powerfully life-affirming. Honey, being the purest, most natural, and readily available form of sweetness, became a direct, potent conduit to these overwhelmingly positive associations, making it an entirely natural and obvious choice for anything related to love, affection, fertility, and even general well-being. You were quite literally sweetening the path to romance, hoping to make the journey as pleasant and fruitful as possible. Now let's turn to a more explicit and quite fascinating historical anecdote, courtesy of Eleanor Herman's Sex with Kings, a book that, as we've established, never shies away from the juicy details. You see, while honey itself was innocent and wholesome, its application in the pursuit of desire could be less so, or at least, rather unconventional. The legendary beauty and longtime mistress of King Henry II of France Diane de Poitiers was famously known throughout Europe for her exquisite porcelain complexion and surprisingly youthful appearance, even as she advanced in age. While this isn't directly a story of honey as an aphrodisiac for her sexual performance, it ties into the broader, overarching theme of preserving and enhancing one's desirability and allure in a highly competitive royal court. It was widely rumored that Diane consumed a daily concoction containing liquid gold, a rather fancy, incredibly expensive, and likely very poisonous medieval supplement, certainly not recommended by your doctor today, and other mysterious ingredients to maintain her famed beauty and vitality. While her specific beauty regimen was not honey-based, it powerfully illustrates the extraordinary lengths to which powerful individuals, especially women in positions of influence, would go in order to remain attractive, desirable, and indispensable to their powerful partners. You can almost imagine the hushed whispers among the ladies of the court, their eyes wide with curiosity, eagerly trying to divine her beauty secrets, perhaps adding extra honey to their own diets and morning elixirs, just in case it held some similar, undocumented magic. Historians still argue whether the perceived fertility benefits and amorous effects of honey and mead were due to genuine, measurable nutritional properties, its rich caloric energy in a time when food scarcity was a constant threat, or simply the relaxing, mood-enhancing effects of the alcohol in mead combined with an incredibly strong placebo effect. Was it the golden honey itself that worked its magic, or the profound cultural belief and widespread expectation that it should work, amplified by the joyous celebration and ritual surrounding its consumption? You might find yourself leaning back, perhaps a gentle, knowing smile now gracing your face, contemplating how much of love's elusive magic is truly within the ingredients themselves, and how much is beautifully woven by the threads of human belief, cultural practice, and the enduring power of hope. As you drift deeper, the sweet, comforting scent of honey seems to permeate the very air around you, a soft, reassuring reminder of love's enduring, gentle power, even in a world full of strange potions and desperate charms. Having indulged in the sweet, comforting embrace of honey and its ancient, pervasive role in medieval romance, your imaginative journey now takes a slightly darker, certainly stranger, and perhaps even a bit more unsettling turn, leading you into a peculiar corner of medieval culinary aphrodisiacs, the bizarre and often stomach-churning use of animal parts potency. Imagine, if you dare to peer into this shadowy realm, a medieval alchemist's workshop, a place far removed from the clean, bustling atmosphere of a royal kitchen. This is a dimly lit, often dusty space where the lines between rudimentary medicine, genuine magic, and macabre experimentation blurred entirely, creating a potent brew of desperate hope and unsettling practices. The air here isn't filled with the comforting scent of roasted meats or simmering spices, but rather something earthy, distinctly musky, and faintly off, perhaps even a little gamey. You might catch a disconcerting whiff of dried, pulverized powders, the sharp, metallic tang of strange elixirs bubbling in glass flasks, and perhaps the unmistakable, pungent aroma of something once vividly alive, now tragically reduced to a mere inert ingredient for a mysterious concoction. You see, the medieval mind often operated on a principle known as sympathetic magic, a fundamental belief system where like affects like. This simple yet powerful idea dictated that if a creature was known, observed, or even simply believed to possess qualities like exceptional virility, immense strength, fierce courage, or prolific breeding capabilities, then consuming specific parts of that very creature was thought to miraculously transfer those desirable qualities to the human consumer. It's a rather direct, if somewhat grisly and often unappetizing form of folk logic, isn't it? If a majestic bull is renowned for its formidable strength and tireless procreative vigor, then surely eating a bull's, well, parts that are associated with those qualities would undeniably make you strong and vigorous too. And in the often desperate pursuit of love, unbridled passion, and most crucially fertility, especially for noble lines, no part of an animal seemed too outlandish, too repulsive, or too morally questionable to consider for ingestion. It's the medieval equivalent of saying, I want to be as fast as a cheetah, so I'll eat cheetah meat. Probably not the most effective diet or fitness plan then or now, but the belief was certainly potent. A quirky tidbit that exemplifies this bizarre yet pervasive belief: sparrow brains were shockingly believed to be potent aphrodisiacs. Sparrows, as you might recall from observing them flitting about, are rather well known for their enthusiastic, frequent, and seemingly ceaseless mating habits. Therefore, by consuming their tiny, delicate brains, one fervently hoped to miraculously inherit their boundless ardor and energetic mating prowess. You can almost picture a medieval cook, or more likely, a desperate herbalist, meticulously plucking tiny deceased sparrows, their fingers stained, trying to delicately extract their minuscule brains for the Lord's evening meal, or for a love-struck maiden's secret potion, all in the name of igniting passion, or at least, ensuring procreation. It truly makes you wonder how many countless sparrows met their unfortunate, untimely end at the hands of desperate romantics and hopeful dynasts across medieval Europe. Eleanor Herman's Unflinching Sex with Kings provides vivid and often shocking accounts that illuminate the extreme lengths to which powerful royals and their ambitious courtiers would go to ensure their virility and, perhaps more importantly, their fertility, particularly when the crucial matter of producing legitimate heirs hung precariously in the balance. Think of the various, often stomach-churning concoctions regularly served to aging monarchs whose virility was waning, or to queens who struggled to conceive and secure the succession. While specific, exact recipes for these bizarre elixirs are often lost to the mists of time or purposefully shrouded in intentional secrecy, for good reason, one might assume. The general, pervasive belief in the power of animal organs and tissues was widespread and deeply ingrained across all levels of society. For instance, the genitals of various animals, particularly those known for their formidable strength or their impressive breeding prowess, like majestic stags, powerful boars, or even robust wolves, were often carefully dried, painstakingly powdered, and then discreetly incorporated into drinks, rich broths, or savory dishes. Imagine for a moment the challenge and the sheer audacity of presenting a powerful duke or a discerning queen with a fine glass of ruby red wine, subtly, perhaps imperceptibly, laced with powdered, well, let's just delicately call it essence of boar. The mere thought might make your modern palate feel a little queasy, or perhaps turn a shade of olive green. But for them, for the medieval individual consumed by the need for love or progeny, it was considered a perfectly legitimate, if potent, and potentially unsavory solution to their most pressing romantic or dynastic dilemmas. The Kama Sutra, while originating from a vastly different cultural context in ancient India, also fascinatingly discusses various animal-derived ingredients for enhancing sexual prowess. However, its approach is typically more nuanced, focusing on ingredients like specific types of milk, certain preparations of honey, and even particular types of nourishing fish, all aimed at improving overall health, vigor, and sensual enjoyment rather than purely coercive magic. This global human tendency to look to the animal kingdom for solutions to matters of the heart and body, despite differing cultural interpretations, shows a broader, universal impulse. You're observing a common human desire for control and enhancement, filtered through remarkably distinct and often bizarre cultural lenses. This profound reliance on animal parts also highlights the very specific medieval understanding of the human body, its functions, and its intricate connection to the vast, often mysterious natural world around them. They didn't have modern pharmaceuticals, gleaming laboratories, or sophisticated chemical analyses. Their pharmacy was literally the forest, the bustling farm, the local market, and the rough and ready butcher's block. If something seemed to work, even if only anecdotally or through the power of sheer belief, it was eagerly incorporated into their growing repertoire of remedies and magical concoctions. Historians still argue whether the actual efficacy of these animal-based aphrodisiacs was ever genuinely observed or scientifically proven, or if it was almost entirely a direct result of the powerful placebo effect combined with the intense psychological impact of consuming something so inherently powerful, vital, or even taboo. You can almost hear the nervous, almost palpable anticipation at the dimly lit medieval dinner table, wondering if tonight's mysterious, oddly textured stew would finally yield the desired romantic results, or simply a bout of indigestion. It truly makes you appreciate the comparatively mundane nature of modern dating, where at least the worst you typically face is a terribly awkward conversation, a bad pickup line, or perhaps a rather dull meal, not a questionable, powdered animal organ on your plate. As the strange and rather unsavory taste of powdered animal parts hopefully fades from your imagined medieval palate, leaving you perhaps with a mild sense of historical indigestion, let's graciously shift our focus to something far more appealing, much sweeter and equally imbued with profound symbolic power: fruitful symbolism. You're now gently wandering through a sun-drenched medieval orchard, perhaps in late summer or early autumn, the air thick and sweet with the intoxicating scent of ripening apples and plump pears, or maybe a vibrant wild garden overflowing with juicy berries and bursting pomegranates. In this lush, verdant world, every single plant, every fruit, every blossom held layers upon layers of intricate meaning, often connecting directly and profoundly to fundamental themes of love, abundant fertility, passionate desire, and the very cycle of life itself. It's truly like stepping into a living still life painting, a vibrant tapestry where every carefully depicted object subtly whispers a secret, an ancient tale, or a hidden promise. You see, for the medieval mind, the natural world was not just a collection of plants and animals. It was a sacred book of allegories, a direct and tangible reflection of both divine order and the complex, often chaotic human experience. Fruits, in particular, with their plump, inviting forms, their sweet, succulent flesh, and their precious hidden seeds, were incredibly potent and universal symbols of procreation, blossoming love, and teeming abundance. They weren't merely simple snacks to stave off hunger. They were powerful visual metaphors for the very act of love itself and its blessed, fruitful outcomes. This deep symbolic interpretation was heavily influenced by pervasive biblical imagery. Think, of course, of the iconic apple in the Garden of Eden. Though its symbolism, there was less about aphrodisiacs and more about forbidden knowledge, temptation, and the fall from grace. However, the powerful idea of fruit as an object of irresistible temptation, or a catalyst for forbidden desire, certainly carried over and deeply permeated medieval thought and folklore. Consider the ubiquitous apple. While often, indeed, associated with the original temptation and sin, it was simultaneously revered as a powerful symbol of love, marriage, and fertility, particularly outside of the direct biblical narrative. You might witness a hopeful suitor, perhaps a dashing knight or a shy young merchant, offering a perfectly ripe, blushing apple to his beloved, a gesture laden not just with simple politeness, but with profound romantic intent and unspoken promises. A quirky tidbit, and one that highlights the charming simplicity of some medieval love rituals. In certain folk practices, two lovers would each take a solemn bite from the same apple, believing this shared act would magically bind their hearts together forever, ensuring unwavering loyalty and enduring affection. It's a bit like sharing a single piece of incredibly rare, expensive fancy chocolate today, but with significantly more profound, mystical implications for your shared destiny and eternal devotion. This simple, seemingly innocent act elevated the humble apple to a surprisingly powerful tool in the often complex arsenal of medieval love magic, a silent, fragrant promise exchanged between hopeful hearts in a world of limited expression. Eleanor Herman's Sex with Kings, yes, her endlessly fascinating book just keeps popping up like a particularly persistent and scandalous medieval jester at every turn, offers tantalizing glimpses into how even the most powerful and influential figures of the age engaged with these profound natural symbols. Royal gardens were not merely designed for leisurely strolls, aesthetic pleasure, or practical sustenance. They were often meticulously planned and cultivated with specific symbolic plants, including those widely believed to influence love, fertility, and even political alliances. Imagine a powerful queen, perhaps one desperate for an heir, strolling thoughtfully through her private walled garden, her silken gown rustling softly as she carefully plucks a ripe, bursting fig from a branch, quietly contemplating its ancient association with bountiful fertility and abundant progeny. These acts, though seemingly mundane and private, were deeply charged with layers of personal and dynastic meaning, perhaps even whispered prayers for a long-awaited heir to secure the throne. The Kama Sutra, as we've noted, while from a vastly different cultural and geographical context, again provides an interesting and illuminating cross-cultural parallel. While it doesn't focus on fruit specifically as direct aphrodisiacs in the same symbolic, almost magical way that medieval Europe did, it frequently and beautifully uses metaphors drawn from nature, including lush flowers, fertile trees, and abundant gardens, to describe physical beauty, sensual pleasure, and the overflowing abundance of desire. This recurring thematic connection powerfully underlines a universal human tendency to see profound reflections of our own desires, our biological drives, and our deepest longings in the natural world that surrounds us. You're witnessing how remarkably different cultures, separated by vast distances and centuries, nevertheless interpret shared biological realities and universal human emotions through their own unique and richly symbolic languages. Another incredibly potent and visually striking fruit in medieval symbolism was the fig. Known universally for its numerous tiny hidden seeds, the fig was an ancient and unmistakable symbol of fertility, abundance, and even overt sexuality. In some cultures, its luscious, ripe form was even explicitly associated with female genitalia, making its offering a rather direct, though subtly conveyed romantic proposition. You might therefore find them served prominently at grand wedding feasts, not just because they were deliciously sweet and readily available, but primarily because they carried a powerful, unspoken blessing for future children and the prosperity of the new union. Historians still engage in lively debate and scholarship, arguing whether the primary power and efficacy of these symbolically rich fruits lay in their actual nutritional value, perhaps providing crucial vitamins and energy in a diet often lacking them, their suggestive physical forms, or simply the incredibly strong and deeply ingrained cultural and symbolic associations that had accumulated around them over countless centuries. Was it the vitamin C and natural sugars, the evocative shape, or the shared, collective belief that truly made them potent instruments in the medieval game of love? It's a delightful riddle indeed, one deliciously wrapped in a sweet apple and gracefully served with a plump fig, inviting you to ponder its layers of meaning as you drift further into this fascinating historical dream. From the sweet symbolic embrace of fruit, you're now gracefully moving into a slightly more humble, yet equally fascinating corner of medieval culinary lore: the surprising vegetable virtues. Imagine yourself standing quietly in a peasant's small, neatly ordered garden patch, perhaps surrounded by sturdy wooden fences to keep out stray livestock. Or perhaps you're observing a monastery's carefully tended kitchen garden, filled with rows of humble roots, vibrant leafy greens, and other everyday staples that sustain daily life. In the medieval world, even the most unassuming vegetable wasn't simply regarded as mere food for sustenance. It was often profoundly imbued with hidden powers, mystical properties, and, crucially for our discussion, the subtle ability to stir desire and aid in the vital process of procreation. It's a compelling testament to the widespread belief that magic, or at least a potent, unseen influence, could be discovered in the most ordinary and accessible places, not just in exotic spices from distant lands, or the rare, often macabre, parts of mythical animals. You see, much like their more esteemed fruit counterparts, vegetables were frequently interpreted through the pervasive lens of sympathetic magic, where perceived similarities in form or growth translated to similar effects, or through their supposed humoral qualities, which governed bodily functions and temperaments. If a hardy root vegetable plunged deep into the earth and grew strong and unyielding, it might well be thought to physically strengthen virility and resolve. If a leafy green was observed to be vibrant, resilient, and seemingly endlessly regenerating, it might powerfully signify fertility and abundance. The medieval understanding of plant power was deeply and intricately intertwined with their daily observations of nature's cycles and forms, even if those observations, from a modern scientific perspective, often led to some rather interesting and charmingly naive conclusions. It's a bit like someone today earnestly believing that eating a perfectly straight carrot will magically make your life more orderly and streamlined, which, let's be honest, might not be the worst or least logical idea someone could have. Take, for instance, the incredibly humble carrot. While today you might primarily associate it with improving eyesight, a connection, funnily enough, largely popularized by British wartime propaganda, not ancient wisdom. In the medieval period, carrots, particularly those with a vibrant orange or deep purple hue, were sometimes seen as potent aphrodisiacs. Their distinctive taproot-like form, delving deep and firmly into the earth, was strongly associated with concepts of fertility, groundedness, and masculine potency. You might find them carefully cooked into rich, savory stews designed for a special meal, or even presented raw, perhaps accompanied by a subtle, knowing glance, all with the quiet, unspoken hope of sparking passionate desire. A quirky tidbit that reinforces this belief: some medieval texts also explicitly mention parsnips, for strikingly similar reasons. Their sweet, earthy nature, their robust growth, and their unmistakably phallic shape lent themselves quite naturally to this widespread belief in their amorous properties. It's a fascinating reminder that medieval people weren't just practical, utilitarian eaters. They were deeply symbolic eaters, constantly looking for deeper, often mystical, meaning and hidden power in every aspect of their meals, transforming mundane sustenance into potential instruments of destiny. Eleanor Herman's Sex with Kings. Yes, we're still gleaning invaluable insights from this endlessly fascinating treasure trove of royal intrigue and intimate history. Doesn't delve heavily into the specifics of peasant vegetables, as her focus is primarily on the more lavish and often scandalous lives of royalty. However, it vividly illuminates the broader, pervasive royal obsession with fertility and dynasty, an obsession that transcended social class and desperate measures, regardless of the ingredient's perceived social standing. If a monarch or a powerful noble was struggling desperately to produce a much-needed heir, every possible avenue, no matter how humble, bizarre, or even unappetizing it seemed, would be exhaustively explored. While kings might have indulged in exotic meats, rare spices, and even pulverized unicorn horn, the underlying desperation for progeny and secure succession would make even common, unassuming vegetables a subject of intense, hopeful scrutiny if they were rumored to possess any form of potency. You can almost imagine a frustrated royal physician having seemingly exhausted all the more expensive, glamorous, and exotic remedies, quietly and somewhat sheepishly suggesting a daily, generous dose of potent root vegetables to an increasingly desperate and frustrated royal couple. The Kama Sutra, again, from its ancient Indian context, in its vast and comprehensive compendium of life, love, and pleasure, does indeed mention various vegetarian elements and their specific roles in enhancing overall well-being and physical pleasure. However, it usually frames this within the context of a balanced, healthy diet and a holistic approach to life, rather than attributing specific magical or coercive properties to individual vegetables. For example, certain legumes and root vegetables are discussed for their nutritive qualities that contribute to overall vigor, strength, and stamina. This consistent recognition across vastly different cultures highlights a universal human inquiry into how food affects our bodies and minds, even if the medieval European interpretation leaned more heavily into the magical, symbolic, and often superstitious. You're observing a shared human quest for answers about our own nature, but interpreted through vastly different cultural lenses and leading to wonderfully diverse conclusions. Another surprisingly prominent vegetable, especially for its perceived romantic and vital qualities, was the leek. Often depicted in medieval art and celebrated in literature, the leek was strongly associated with strength, vigor, and masculine prowess, perhaps due to its robust growth, its resilient nature, and its distinctive, somewhat sharp flavor. While not considered a direct magical aphrodisiac in the same vein as the more notorious mandrake, it was widely seen as a wholesome food that significantly contributed to overall bodily strength, resilience, and general good health, which in turn was conducive to all forms of physical activity, including, presumably, romantic and marital endeavors. It's rather like a medieval energy drink, but in a much healthier, all-natural vegetable form, without the unpleasant jitters or sudden crash. Historians still argue whether the actual caloric and nutritional value of these common, accessible vegetables played a more significant role in their perceived potency, especially in diets that were often deficient, than their symbolic shapes or deeply ingrained folk beliefs. Were they truly magical catalysts for love, or just genuinely good for you, in a generally deficient and challenging medieval diet, simply perceived as magical due to their positive health benefits. It remains a delightful culinary mystery, one rooted deeply and firmly in the rich, dark earth of medieval Europe. You can almost feel the profound connection between the medieval peasant and the humble plant, a primal, intuitive understanding of the earth's boundless bounty and its potential to influence every aspect of human life, from basic survival to the elusive stirrings of the heart. Even in the simplest, most ordinary garden, the medieval mind found a world of hidden power, quiet influence, and profound meaning, a testament to their deep, almost spiritual engagement with nature and its myriad secrets. And as you drift further into this historical dreamscape, perhaps you can even smell the earthy, comforting scent of freshly dug carrots, now imbued with centuries of hopeful, unspoken desires and the quiet magic of everyday life. From the earthy, humble appeal of carrots and leeks, and the often unsettling realm of animal-derived potencies, you're now gracefully stepping to a far more convivial and, frankly, much more appealing domain where pleasure and persuasion flowed freely, the sophisticated world of wine and elixirs. Imagine yourself immersed in the heart of a grand medieval feast, the vast hall softly illuminated by the warm, dancing glow of countless beeswax candles, casting long, shifting shadows on the stone walls. Minstrels play soft, enchanting tunes on lutes and harps, their melodies weaving through the murmuring conversations, and the air is filled with the delightful, rhythmic clinking of ornate goblets as wine is poured and consumed. In this vibrant setting, wine wasn't merely a simple beverage for thirst. It was a potent social lubricant, a profound symbol of hospitality and wealth, and quite often, a discreet yet powerful carrier for more subtle and clandestine forms of love magic. It's a bit like imagining our modern, carefully crafted cocktails, but with significantly less precise measurements, a heavy dose of fervent belief, and a lot more whispered, hopeful intentions poured into every serving. You see, wine, with its inherent intoxicating properties, was naturally and universally associated with altered states of mind, a loosening of inhibitions, and a general heightening of emotions and perceptions. If you harbored a secret desire to encourage a romantic connection, to gently nudge someone's affections in your direction, or even to soften their resolve for a more intimate encounter, a carefully offered cup of wine was often your first, most obvious, and culturally accepted choice. But beyond its inherent physiological effects, medieval beliefs often ascribed additional, almost mystical powers to wine, especially when it was thoughtfully infused or prepared with specific magical intentions. It was widely believed that the very essence, or spirit, of the herbs, spices, or other ingredients meticulously added to the wine would subtly transfer its properties to the drinker, gently yet effectively nudging their affections or igniting a hidden spark of passion. It's the medieval version of proposing a "let's have one for the road," but the road is paved with the intoxicating promise of romantic destiny, winding through moonlit gardens and hushed castle chambers. Consider, for example, the chilling yet fascinating notion of love philters, or love potions, being mixed directly and discreetly into wine. These weren't always the stereotypical bubbling, noxious concoctions brewed in a hag's cauldron within a dark, foreboding forest hut. Often they were far more subtle and insidious additions, slipped in by a careful, hopeful, or sometimes desperate hand. A truly quirky tidbit that demonstrates the unusual ingredients involved. One surprisingly common and rather unsettling belief involved adding a few drops of pigeon blood to wine. Pigeons, as you might recall from observing them flitting around medieval courtyards, were widely known for their highly visible, seemingly monogamous pairing and their constant, gentle cooing, which was interpreted as a symbol of enduring love and devotion. Therefore, a few drops of their fresh blood, mixed discreetly and, one hopes, imperceptibly into a lover's wine, was meant to ensure unwavering devotion and unbreakable fidelity. One might reasonably argue that the slight, metallic, irony taste would be less than ideal for a truly romantic evening, perhaps even prompting suspicion. But medieval palates were perhaps less discerning due to a lack of other strong flavors, or simply far more desperate in their pursuit of love than concerned with minor culinary nuances. Eleanor Herman's insightful book, Sex with Kings, vividly highlights how wine was an almost ever-present, ubiquitous element in every facet of royal life, influencing everything from complex political negotiations and treacherous alliances to delicate diplomatic relations, and, most certainly, passionate romantic liaisons. Kings and queens, often burdened by the immense weight of dynastic duty, bound by the confines of often loveless arranged marriages, or simply seeking illicit pleasure, might frequently turn to discreetly prepared and infused wines to ignite a spark with a preferred consort, to rekindle a fading flame, or even to ensure the enduring affection and compliance of their royal spouse. You can easily imagine a nervous lady in waiting, under the watchful, discerning eye of a powerful queen, carefully pouring a glittering glass of wine for the king, a tiny concealed vial of powdered herbs, or a secret liquid hidden deftly in her palm, hoping, with every drop, to subtly influence his heart, his mind, and his desires. This wasn't merely about getting pleasantly tipsy. It was about subtly altering perception, softening resistance, and fostering an artificial yet compelling connection. The Kama Sutra, while originating from a completely different cultural and temporal context, frequently and fascinatingly discusses the sophisticated preparation and convivial consumption of various intoxicating beverages, including different types of wines and potent liquors, as integral aids to pleasure, social bonding, and the enhancement of sensual experiences. It also meticulously details how various aromatic herbs, warming spices, and other natural ingredients can be thoughtfully added to these drinks to enhance their specific effects, whether for stimulating desire, promoting profound relaxation, or fostering a sense of blissful unity. This remarkable cross-cultural consistency, spanning vast geographical and historical divides, powerfully reinforces the ancient and enduring human understanding that altered states of consciousness, often pleasantly induced by certain beverages, can indeed play a significant and often crucial role in facilitating romantic and sensual encounters. You're witnessing a universal phenomenon, a shared human impulse, adapted and reinterpreted according to the distinct beliefs, available ingredients, and social norms of different eras and belief systems. Historians still vigorously argue whether the actual effect of these wine-based filters was ever truly magical or mystically coercive, or if it was simply the powerful combination of alcohol's well-known disinhibiting effects, coupled with the incredibly strong psychological power of belief, fervent expectation, and the deeply ingrained cultural narrative surrounding such potions. Was it truly the few drops of pigeon blood that worked its purported charm, or merely the warm, comforting glow of the wine, the hopeful heart of the drinker, and the persuasive context of the romantic encounter that genuinely worked its magic? You might consider, as you listen, how often the desired outcome was less about achieving a true, deep, and lasting affection, and more about prompting fleeting passion, securing temporary compliance, or simply ensuring a convenient, if forced, romantic liaison. It's a truly fascinating reflection on the blurred, often indistinguishable lines between genuine connection and a manufactured or even coerced desire, all discreetly stirred and served within a glistening medieval goblet. As you drift deeper into this historical reverie, perhaps you can almost hear the soft, lulling murmur of medieval conversation, the gentle, comforting pour of wine, and feel its warmth, subtly inviting you to relax even deeper into this complex, alluring, and sometimes unsettling history of human longing and culinary magic. As the intoxicating warmth of medieval wine, perhaps still carrying the faint, unsettling hint of pigeon blood, gently settles over you, and the echoes of whispered filters fade into the castle's ancient stones, your imaginative journey now takes a decidedly more arcane, intellectual, and perhaps even slightly dangerous turn. You're being drawn deeper into the mysterious and often misunderstood world of alchemists and love. Imagine a hidden chamber, perhaps tucked away high in a secluded castle tower, its single window gazing out at the distant star-dusted medieval night, or perhaps concealed within a dusty, unassuming urban alleyway behind a creaking, unmarked door. Here, amidst the gentle bubbling of strange retorts, the soft, rhythmic glow of alembics heating over charcoal fires, and shelves crammed precariously with strange minerals, glittering crystals, and sealed jars containing bizarre substances, the alchemists toiled tirelessly. Their quest was not merely for the legendary philosopher's stone that could transmute base metals into gold, but also, for many, something far more intimately precious and universally sought after: the ultimate love filter, capable of bending hearts and securing unwavering devotion. It's a bit like imagining a medieval scientist desperately trying to engineer romance in a laboratory, but with a lot more highly toxic mercury, volatile sulfur, and a conspicuous, alarming lack of modern safety goggles. You see, for the medieval scholar and practitioner, alchemy wasn't just a crude precursor to chemistry, nor was it solely about transmuting lead into gold. It was a vast, incredibly complex, and profoundly philosophical system that sought to understand and manipulate the fundamental forces of the entire universe, both the seen and the unseen. And what force, the alchemist might ponder, is more fundamental, more powerful, or more mystifying than human love and desire itself? For the dedicated alchemist, love was seen as a kind of profound chemical reaction, a mysterious, almost divine transformation that could, theoretically, be replicated, enhanced, or even perfected through a series of meticulous preparations, precise distillations, and secret esoteric knowledge. It was the ultimate intellectual and spiritual challenge, a grand quest to distill affection, desire, and emotional connection down to its very purest, most potent essence, often referred to as a quintessence. Consider for a moment the alchemist's meticulous and often perilous process. They fervently believed in the transformative power of various arcane procedures, processes like distillation to separate volatile spirits, calcination to reduce substances to their fundamental ashes, and coagulation to solidify ethereal forms. Each step was believed to purify substances, bringing them ever closer to their ideal, perfect form. A truly quirky tidbit that encapsulates this ambition: some ancient alchemical texts, written in cryptic symbols and veiled language, subtly hinted at the possibility of creating a legendary tincture of Venus, a supremely potent liquid believed to embody the very essence of love, beauty, and harmonious attraction, directly derived from the planetary influence of Venus, the goddess of love. This wasn't just about combining raw ingredients in a haphazard fashion. It was about performing precise rituals, carefully observing specific astrological alignments, such as the waxing or waning moon, or the auspicious position of Venus in the night sky, and uttering precise, often Latin, incantations to imbue the evolving concoction with vital cosmic power and spiritual energy. You can almost picture the alchemist, hunched intently over a gently simmering flask, their brow furrowed in concentration, murmuring quietly about planetary influences and the conjunctions of stars, hoping that the benevolent position of Venus would truly bless their arduous romantic endeavor and bring forth the desired passionate response. Eleanor Herman's Sex with Kings, yes, her insights are truly indispensable here, aren't they? Serves as a poignant reminder that powerful monarchs often supported and patronized alchemists, not solely for the tantalizing promise of untold riches from gold, but also, and perhaps more urgently, for desperate solutions to their more personal and often scandalous dilemmas. If a mighty king was struggling with a tormenting unrequited love, pining after a noblewoman who seemed impervious to his charms, or if a queen desperately wished to secure her wandering husband's affections and ensure his fidelity, the court alchemist might be urgently called upon to produce a perfect love potion, one guaranteed to work where all else had failed. These alchemically prepared filters were often far more elaborate, costly, and time-consuming than simple herbal brews, frequently involving incredibly rare minerals, complex multi-stage distillations, and ingredients meticulously gathered under specific, astrologically significant lunar phases or planetary hours. Imagine the immense pressure weighing upon the alchemist. Success meant untold royal favor, vast wealth, and undeniable prestige. Failure, however, could potentially mean, well, let's just say a rather rapid and involuntary career change, quite possibly involving a one-way trip to the damp, dark dungeons, or worse. The stakes were incredibly high. Michel Foucault's profound work on the history of sexuality, while not directly focused on the esoteric practices of medieval alchemy, nevertheless helps us fundamentally understand how societies, across different eras, constantly attempt to rationalize, categorize, define, and ultimately control human desire through various, often complex means. Alchemy, in this fascinating context, can be seen as a particularly elaborate, deeply esoteric, and indeed desperate attempt to gain scientific and mystical control over one of the most unpredictable, volatile, and inherently chaotic human forces, love. It speaks to a profound, universal human need for certainty and predictability, even in the face of the inherently capricious and uncontrollable nature of love and affection. You're witnessing humanity's enduring intellectual attempts to systematize the unsystematizable, to logically categorize the inherently illogical, and quite literally, to bottle a raw, powerful emotion. Historians still vigorously argue whether any true alchemical love filters ever genuinely had any effect beyond powerful placebo responses, or, more disturbingly, the actual toxic and often dangerous effects of the heavy metals, like mercury, arsenic, or lead, that were frequently involved in alchemical processes. Was it truly the carefully distilled quintessence of passion that miraculously worked its charm, or simply the recipient's knowledge, often conveyed with great secrecy and ceremony, that they were drinking an incredibly expensive, painstakingly prepared, and ritually potent potion from a renowned, perhaps feared, alchemist? You might also ponder the profound moral implications of such endeavors. Was it truly love if it was chemically induced, or if someone's will was subtly or overtly manipulated? Or was it merely a forced fascination, a kind of psychological servitude? It's a deep and enduring question, one that perhaps still subtly bubbles in the metaphorical alembics of philosophical thought and ethical debate even today. As you continue to drift, perhaps you can almost hear the soft, rhythmic clinking of glass in a distant, secretive laboratory, a quiet, enduring testament to humanity's fascinating, more and sometimes disturbing, quest for magical or scientific control over the elusive human heart. Leaving the smoky, rather intense, and potentially mercury-laced air of the alchemist's tower behind, a place of grand ambitions and questionable safety, your journey now guides you into a surprisingly tranquil, yet equally significant, and perhaps more grounding, part of the medieval landscape, the serene world of the monastic garden's lore. Imagine yourself stepping into a peaceful, enclosed cloister, surrounded by high, ancient stone walls that buffer it from the clamor of the outside world. Here, the only sounds you hear are the gentle rustle of leaves in a soft breeze, the distant, rhythmic chime of a church bell marking the hours, and perhaps the quiet, devout murmur of monks or nuns diligently tending their meticulously organized plots. These gardens, cultivated not just for medicinal purposes and sustenance, but also for spiritual contemplation, and as places of quiet study, held a surprising treasure trove of plants whose perceived powers extended far beyond merely healing the body to, quite unexpectedly, stirring the human heart and influencing desire. It's truly like discovering that the serene, quiet corner of your local botanical garden secretly harbors the ingredients for a powerful, ancient love potion. A charming and rather poignant juxtaposition, isn't it, between spiritual devotion and earthly longing? You see, medieval monasteries were not simply centers of prayer and worship. They were also incredibly vital hubs of learning, scholarship, and practical knowledge, effectively serving as the universities and research centers of their time. Monks and nuns meticulously copied and illuminated ancient texts, including invaluable treatises on botany, herbal medicine, and natural philosophy, thereby preserving centuries of accumulated wisdom that might otherwise have been lost during turbulent periods. This tradition of knowledge preservation included, sometimes inadvertently, information about plants believed to have amorous properties, even if some of that wisdom seemed a little, shall we say, optimistic or based more on folklore than empirical evidence from a modern scientific perspective. Their sprawling gardens were, in essence, living pharmacies, meticulously stocked with a vast array of herbs for every conceivable ailment, from raging fevers and persistent coughs, to bouts of melancholia, and even more obscure conditions. And subtly, almost imperceptibly woven into this intricate medicinal tapestry, were plants widely believed to possess specific aphrodisiac qualities. Consider for a moment the seemingly innocuous nettle. Now your modern mind, perhaps recalling an unfortunate childhood encounter, probably associates nettles primarily with an unpleasant, stinging rash, a minor nuisance of the wild. But in the medieval context, particularly for those deeply immersed in folk medicine and plant lore, the nettle was surprisingly believed to be an aphrodisiac, especially when prepared and consumed in certain specific ways. A truly quirky tidbit that illustrates this unexpected belief. Some obscure medieval texts found in dusty monastic libraries suggest that consuming dried nettle seeds, perhaps cleverly mixed with honey, a delightful callback to our discussion in Section 6, could indeed ignite passion and increase virility. It's a rather counterintuitive and, one might argue, brave choice for a love potion, perhaps serving as an unwitting test of commitment. If you're willing to brave the infamous sting for love, then you truly deserve its sweet rewards. This fascinating example vividly demonstrates that even common, seemingly undesirable, and frankly, painful plants were reevaluated and repurposed through the powerful, often desperate, lens of human desire and the quest for control over emotions. While Eleanor Herman's compelling Sex with Kings primarily focuses on the lavish and often scandalous lives within royal courts and castles, the extensive knowledge of herbs, their effects, and their potential uses often seeped into these elite circles directly from more humble monastic or ancient folk traditions. Royal physicians, seeking every possible remedy for their powerful patrons, might diligently consult scholarly texts painstakingly copied by monks, or rely heavily on the practical expertise of local herbalists and wise women whose deep knowledge often originated from observations made in these very monastic or wild gardens. You can vividly imagine a cloistered monk, perhaps named Brother Thomas or Sister Agnes, diligently cross-referencing ancient Latin texts in the scriptorium, meticulously illuminating new manuscripts, and then, quite unexpectedly, stumbling upon a forgotten cryptic recipe for an herb of Venus, or a love root. Perhaps they would quietly note its potential properties, perhaps with a small, private, ironic smile that subtly curled their lips, despite their solemn vows of chastity and devotion. It highlights the pervasive and undeniableness of this knowledge, its quiet flow through medieval society, even within the strict confines of institutions explicitly dedicated to celibacy and spiritual purity. Michel Foucault's broader, illuminating work on the history of sexuality, though not directly centered on monastic life, would profoundly remind us that even within the seemingly impenetrable confines and strict regulations of monastic existence, the regulation, understanding, and often the suppression of desire were ever present and intensely debated themes. While outwardly promoting and enforcing strict celibacy as a spiritual ideal, the very existence of texts and practices, even if primarily for scholarly preservation, external consultation, or purely theoretical interest, concerning aphrodisiacs within these learned and devout environments, strongly suggests that the fundamental human urge for love, connection, and procreation was a powerful, undeniable force that was constantly acknowledged, if not always openly embraced or indulged. You're witnessing how a powerful, universal human drive found its expression, its interpretation, and its surprising place even in the most unexpected and seemingly ascetic places, proving that even within walls built for spiritual discipline, the heart found ways to be understood. Historians still engage in lively and nuanced debate, arguing whether the historical presence of such aphrodisiac knowledge within monastic texts was intended for practical application within the monastery itself, perhaps as a means to help monks or nuns overcome certain earthly temptations or challenges in adhering to their vows, though this is considered highly unlikely and would have been scandalous, or if it was primarily a purely scholarly pursuit, a commitment to preserving ancient wisdom for its own sake, regardless of its spiritual implications. Was this knowledge a practical tool for daily life, a cautionary warning against worldly pleasures, or simply an integral part of a larger encyclopedic compendium of knowledge that was seen as valuable to humanity? You might find yourself pondering the quiet yet profound contradictions of these sacred spaces, where profound spiritual devotion and persistent earthly desires sometimes found an unexpected and fascinating common ground in the humble yet potent plant kingdom. As you drift deeper into this tranquil historical dream, perhaps you can almost smell the cool, damp earth and the subtle, mixed fragrance of various herbs in a meticulously tended medieval monastic garden, a gentle and enduring reminder that even in quietude and spiritual discipline, life's most potent and fundamental forces stir ceaselessly, leaving the quiet serenity of monastic gardens, where every unassuming herb held a secret whisper of healing or hidden influence, You're now vividly transported to the vibrant, often boisterous, and always grand atmosphere of a medieval courtly feast and seduction. Imagine a truly enormous hall, vast and echoing, now ablaze with the soft, warm glow of hundreds of flickering beeswax candles held in ornate sconces and the comforting crackle and roar of massive fires blazing in cavernous hearths. Tables long and heavy, groan audibly under the sheer weight of an astonishing array of roasted meats, from whole suckling pigs to majestic swans, intricately crafted pies with elaborate crusts, and glittering, overflowing flagons of rich spiced wine. Music swells and ebbs from a minstrel's gallery. Laughter rings out, occasionally punctuated by the joyous clatter of silver against pewter, and the air itself is thick with a palpable sense of anticipation, mingling with the heady aromas of roasted game, exotic spices, and sweet pastries. Here, amidst this dazzling spectacle, food wasn't just about mere sustenance or even quiet, subtle magic. It was a performance, a meticulously choreographed grand stage upon which the intricate, delicate dance of courtship, social maneuvering, and political intrigue played out, with culinary aphrodisiacs often serving as silent, potent, and sometimes deceptive accomplices. You see, a medieval feast was far more than a simple meal. It was a highly ritualized and deeply significant event, a very public and often ostentatious display of wealth, immense power, and rigidly defined social hierarchy. Every dish, every seating arrangement, every toast held implicit meaning. But subtly, often imperceptibly, beneath the dazzling surface of glittering silverware, meticulously folded linen, and elaborately presented dishes, intricate games of seduction, influence, and personal advancement were constantly being played out. A carefully chosen morsel offered from one's own plate, a shared cup of spiced wine, a particular dish presented with a knowing glance or a suggestive tilt of the head. These were all integral parts of an unspoken, yet universally understood, language of desire and covert communication. It's like attending a very high-stakes dinner party where every single dish served could be a delicate, flirtatious wink, a subtle invitation, or even a daring and audacious romantic proposition, all without a single word needing to be uttered. Consider not just the ingredients, but the sheer elaborate presentation of certain dishes at these magnificent feasts. Sometimes the aphrodisiacal power wasn't solely in the specific ingredients themselves, but in the remarkably intricate and often theatrical way the food was prepared, presented, and ceremoniously served. A truly quirky medieval tidbit that exemplifies this artistry and symbolism. Subtleties, pronounced subtleties, were astonishingly intricate, edible sculptures, often meticulously crafted from sugar paste, marzipan, or spiced bread dough, then painted with vibrant natural dyes and sometimes gilded with real gold leaf, which were presented as showpieces between courses at grand feasts. While many of these culinary masterpieces depicted heraldic symbols, legendary beasts, or scenes from classical mythology or chivalric romance, some, designed for a more discerning or adventurous audience, might have discreetly referenced themes of love, fertility, or even explicit erotic mythology, acting as subtle yet powerful visual cues for those in the know. Imagine a breathtaking sugar sculpture depicting the goddess Venus and her mischievous son Cupid locked in an embrace, or a gallant knight kneeling humbly before his ladylove, presenting her with a heart. These edible artworks added another profound layer to the feast, transforming it into a truly multi-sensory and intellectually stimulating experience of desire, art, and subtle communication. Eleanor Herman's indispensable Sex with Kings. Yes, her book continues to be an invaluable and often scandalous guide through the labyrinthine intimacies and appetites of European royalty, providing endless material for our journey. Vividly describes the almost unimaginable opulence and theatricality of royal feasts and how they often, quite purposefully, became charged settings for illicit romantic encounters or the subtle yet determined advancement of personal and romantic agendas. A powerful king, perhaps seeking to establish a new favorite, might deliberately seat a favored lady-in-waiting exceptionally close to him, ensuring that she received the choicest cuts of roasted meat, the freshest, most succulent fruits, and, crucially, the most potent and luxuriously spiced wines, perhaps those specifically and secretly prepared with amorous intentions by his personal alchemist or chef. The very act of sharing food from the same platter, or sipping from the same goblet could create a powerful, almost intimate sense of connection and shared destiny, far transcending mere politeness or table manners. You can almost tangibly feel the charged, electric atmosphere, the silent, lingering glances exchanged across the richly laden table, the carefully orchestrated proximity of bodies, all subtly designed to spark something far more profound and personal than just polite conversation about the weather or the day's hunt. Michel Foucault's broader historical lens, though not specifically focused on medieval banquets, profoundly helps us understand how such public and elaborate displays of consumption and social interaction at feasts were deeply entwined with the prevailing power structures and the meticulous regulation of bodies and desires within society. The feast was a meticulously controlled social space where established roles and hierarchies were reaffirmed and performed. But it was also, paradoxically, a subtle arena where hidden desires could be negotiated, unspoken flirtations initiated, and even social transgressions cunningly attempted under the convenient veil of festivity and revelry. You're observing a carefully constructed social environment where the strict rules of decorum were both rigidly enforced and simultaneously, artfully and discreetly subverted, all to serve various complex ends, including the often urgent pursuit of romantic and sexual gratification. Historians still engage in robust and ongoing debate about whether the sheer, overwhelming, elaborate nature of these feasts, combined with the consumption of exceptionally rich foods, intoxicating spiced wines, and the heightened social drama, genuinely enhanced desire through measurable physiological means, or if the powerful psychological effect of the luxurious setting, the permissive festive atmosphere, and the intense social interaction played a more significantly profound role. Was it truly the specially spiced wine, the suggestive sugar subtlety, or simply the permission and liberation of the celebratory, often indulgent, festive atmosphere that courageously encouraged romantic advances and illicit dalliances? You might ponder, as you drift deeper into this historical reverie, how many secret, illicit notes were deftly passed under the voluminous tablecloths, how many hands subtly brushed against each other under the table's edge, and how many hearts fluttered with nervous excitement or desperate hope amidst the overwhelming grandeur and the carefully planned consumption of potentially amorous foods. It's a grand, multisensory, and utterly fascinating edible drama constantly unfolding before your very eyes, a testament to the enduring human desire to find love, intimacy, and connection, even amidst the most lavish, public, and politically charged of settings. Having witnessed the grand spectacle of medieval feasts and the subtle games played out amidst the clinking of goblets and the elaborate artistry of subtleties, your attention now shifts to a profoundly fascinating, yet often overlooked aspect of culinary aphrodisiacs: the deeply ingrained practice of gendered consumption. Imagine for a moment the distinct and often rigid roles played by men and women in medieval society, particularly within the aristocratic and courtly circles we've been exploring. Their lives were often meticulously governed by different social expectations, burdened by vastly different responsibilities, and consequently, they approached matters of love, fertility, and even the very food they consumed to influence these areas from distinctly separate perspectives. It's like discovering that in a complex historical cookbook, there were entire, separate sections dedicated not just to different types of dishes or ingredients, but to different genders of diners, each meticulously outlined with their own unique culinary needs and specific aphrodisiacal requirements for achieving romantic success or ensuring progeny. You see, medieval medical and social theories were heavily influenced by ancient Greek and Roman philosophy, particularly the theory of the four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. These theories often posited fundamental, inherent physiological differences between male and female bodies, particularly concerning their internal heat and dryness, or coldness and wetness. Men were generally considered to be hotter and drier, needing specific foods and remedies that could either temper their fiery nature to prevent excessive aggression or impulsive behavior, or conversely, enhance their inherent warmth and vigor when it came to matters of procreation. Women, on the other hand, were often theoretically thought to be colder and wetter, requiring foods that could gently warm them internally or, crucially, stimulate their often perceived more passive or dormant desire. This wasn't just idle, abstract speculation among scholars. It profoundly informed actual dietary practices, the prescription of specific herbal remedies, and the recommended use of certain aphrodisiacs. It's the medieval equivalent of having different sports drinks meticulously formulated for male and female athletes today. But instead of promising electrolytes and endurance, they were promising passion, fertility, and marital harmony. Consider, more specifically, the remedies or potions that were meticulously prescribed for men. A truly quirky medieval tidbit that might surprise your modern sensibilities. Certain medieval medical texts and herbals explicitly recommended rue for men, not as an aphrodisiac at all, but quite the opposite, as an anaphrodisiac, meaning it was firmly believed to reduce or diminish sexual desire. This might seem utterly counterintuitive in a section ostensibly about aphrodisiacs, but it powerfully highlights the complex, gendered understanding of male sexuality. Men's desire was often seen as inherently stronger, more volatile, and potentially overwhelming, needing to be tempered or controlled for spiritual purity, moral rectitude, or simply to prevent social disorder. Conversely, when an aphrodisiac was prescribed for a man, it was almost always something believed to boost physical virility directly, to enhance strength and stamina, such as hearty heating meats, invigorating spices like ginger and pepper, or potent animal organs, explicitly leaning into their supposed hot and dry humoral nature. Eleanor Herman's Sex with Kings provides numerous compelling examples of the immense dynastic and societal pressure placed upon male monarchs to produce legitimate heirs, and the extraordinary, sometimes desperate, lengths they, and their ever-present physicians and cunning advisors, went to ensure their unwavering virility and procreative success. While her book doesn't always explicitly categorize male or female aphrodisiacs with distinct headings, her detailed accounts implicitly and powerfully show this pervasive gendered approach to sexual health and desire. Kings were often given substances specifically designed to boost their physical performance and fertility, to make them more potent and prolific. Queens, in contrast, might discreetly receive concoctions not necessarily to increase their desire, which was often viewed with suspicion if too overt, but primarily to aid conception, or, rather chillingly, to secure their fidelity to their husband. You can vividly imagine the solemn court physician, perhaps a scholar trained in Salerno or Montpellier, diligently consulting ancient humoral texts, carefully selecting different herbs, specific animal parts, and particular foods based not just on the perceived ailment, but crucially on the patient's gender and the very specific outcome desired: a robust male heir, a loyal and fertile lover, or simply a night of passion leading to conception. Michel Foucault's seminal work, The History of Sexuality, while broader in its scope and theoretical framing, profoundly illuminates how societal power structures, religious doctrines, and medical theories intricately shape the understanding, expression, and rigorous regulation of both male and female bodies and their desires throughout history. In the medieval period, female sexuality was often far more tightly controlled, policed, and viewed with suspicion if it deviated from its primary perceived purpose, reproduction within the confines of legitimate marriage. Therefore, aphrodisiacs, or remedies for women, might have been less about enhancing their pleasure or erotic experience, and far more about ensuring their fertility for dynastic purposes, or even subtly ensuring their docility and compliance within the marriage. You're witnessing, as you drift, how deeply intertwined medical beliefs, social norms, and religious morality combined to create distinct and often unequal culinary approaches to sex and desire for each gender, right down to what was believed to be effective and what was served on the plate. Historians still rigorously argue whether the perceived differences in male and female responses to these aphrodisiacs were genuinely rooted in physiological variations, or if they were almost entirely a product of deeply ingrained gender stereotypes, prevailing social expectations, and the dominant medical theories of the time. Did women genuinely react fundamentally differently to specific herbs or food preparations than men? Or was it simply believed, consciously or unconsciously, that they should react differently, based on the prevailing humoral theories and societal roles? You might ponder, as you listen to these historical whispers, The subtle yet profound ways these gendered beliefs influence not just what was eaten, but how medieval people fundamentally understood love, desire, intimacy, and their own intricate bodies. It's a fascinating and poignant look at how pervasive social constructs and deeply held beliefs seeped into even the most intimate aspects of life, right down to the ingredients meticulously chosen and prepared, and to whom they were served. From the gendered subtleties of medieval dietary recommendations, which revealed how medieval society viewed male and female bodies through distinct culinary lenses, your journey now leads you into the intriguing, often clandestine, and undeniably resourceful world of noblewomen's tactics. Imagine the medieval court not just as a bustling place of grand feasts, dazzling tournaments, and intricate political intrigue, but as a complex and often restrictive social arena where women, particularly those of noble birth, navigated a challenging landscape of rigid power structures, overwhelming societal expectations, and frequently severely limited personal agency. While men, especially monarchs, might have openly and even desperately sought physical virility and potency for the crucial purpose of producing legitimate heirs to secure their lineage, women often employed far more discreet, subtle, and ingeniously clever methods to secure their social positions, subtly influence affections, or even, remarkably, inspire genuine love in a world where their fundamental choices, from marriage partners to daily activities, were frequently dictated by dynastic lineage, strategic alliances, and the whims of powerful male relatives. It's like being granted a rare, privileged peek behind the opulent velvet curtains of a grand, elaborate play, allowing you to witness the quiet, often brilliant, and highly effective strategies being executed with precision offstage, far from the public eye. You see, for a medieval noblewoman, marriage was almost universally understood as a strategic alliance, a contractual agreement for the benefit of families and lands, rather than an affair of the heart or a love match based on mutual affection. Her perceived value within the system was often inextricably tied to her physical beauty, the size and richness of her dowry, and most critically, her proven ability to produce healthy male heirs. But even within these profound, often suffocating constraints, the spark of personal desire, the yearning for genuine affection, and the flicker of individual preference still stubbornly persisted. When direct confrontation, open rebellion, or even overt flirtation wasn't a socially acceptable or safe option, culinary manipulation emerged as a subtle yet surprisingly powerful tool in her limited arsenal. These tactics weren't about grand, public gestures or dramatic pronouncements. They were meticulously planned acts designed for gentle nudges, quiet persuasions, and the cunning creation of an almost irresistible allure, all discreetly served with a seemingly innocent meal or a proffered sweetmeat. Consider, for a moment, the intimate role of the lady's private chamber, a secluded, often richly appointed space within the castle or manor house, shielded from the constant scrutiny of the court. Much of this quiet strategizing and preparation might have occurred within these very walls. A truly quirky medieval tidbit that reveals the depth of their resourcefulness. Noblewomen, particularly those responsible for managing large households, were often remarkably skilled in herbalism and folk medicine, knowledge passed down through generations of female relatives, acquired from trusted household servants, or even learned from local wise women and village herbalists. They might meticulously prepare small personal batches of love candies, comforting cordials, or sweetmeats, specifically infused with potent herbs and warming spices like cinnamon or cloves, delightfully revisiting our exotic spices from Section 3, now repurposed for a more personal aim. These delectable treats would then be offered discreetly, perhaps with a meaningful glance, to the object of their affection, whether a reluctant husband, a favorite courtier, or a potential suitor. These weren't just tasty confections. They were carefully crafted inducements, laden with personal intent, quiet desperation, and whispered hopes for a more favorable romantic outcome. It's a bit like baking your crush a homemade batch of cookies today, but instead of mundane chocolate chips, those cookies contain subtle, unspoken promises of passion, fidelity, or even a blossoming love. Eleanor Herman's compelling Sex with Kings is particularly illuminating here, providing vivid, often scandalous accounts of royal mistresses and queens who, Despite their public roles and the intense scrutiny they faced, fiercely guarded and sought to expand their influence over powerful monarchs. While some of these formidable women resorted to outright political maneuvering, strategic alliances, or even open displays of temper, many possessed a profound, intuitive understanding of the power of the personal, the intimate, and the subtly manipulative. A queen, perhaps feeling her influence wane or her husband's eye drift, might discreetly ensure that her husband's favorite dishes were regularly prepared with rumored aphrodisiacs to keep his attentions firmly focused on her. Conversely, a cunning mistress might personally concoct a special, seemingly innocuous cordial or a particularly delightful dessert for her royal lover, specifically designed to deepen his devotion, secure his loyalty, or rekindle his passion. You can easily imagine the quiet, hushed consultations with trusted ladies-in-waiting or loyal household servants, the careful, almost secretive selection of ingredients from hidden stashes, all performed away from the prying, gossiping eyes of the court. This was less about overt power and more about maintaining subtle control over desire, a critical form of agency in a world that offered few direct avenues for female influence. Michel Foucault's The History of Sexuality helps us understand how, even in highly patriarchal and rigidly structured societies, women often found innovative and indirect ways to exert agency, frequently through subversive or seemingly benign means. The sophisticated and discreet use of culinary aphrodisiacs by noblewomen serves as a prime example of this quiet subversion. It wasn't an overt rebellion against their prescribed roles, but rather a clever and effective appropriation of available tools to influence their personal and social circumstances, particularly in an era where female sexuality was often viewed primarily through the lens of reproduction and dynastic continuity rather than personal pleasure, and male desire was frequently seen as a powerful force needing constant management. You're witnessing a fascinating and often poignant interplay of societal constraint and subtle, personal empowerment, cleverly played out in the private, intimate spaces of medieval power, where a woman's wit and access to a well-stocked pantry could be as formidable as a knight's sword. Historians still engage in scholarly debate about whether these noble women truly believed in the inherent magical power of their concoctions, whether they fully understood the complex psychological effect of a specially prepared, highly personalized offering, or if it was a calculated blend of both. Was it the obscure herb or exotic spice that worked its charm, the strength of the woman's intention and will, or simply the powerful psychological impact on the recipient of being thoughtfully and intimately catered to by the object of their affection? You might ponder the complex and multi-layered motivations at play in these intimate culinary dramas. Was it driven by genuine, heartfelt love, a desperate desire for social and economic security, or a cold, calculated move in the intricate and often ruthless game of courtly life? It's a subtle, deeply human domestic drama, perpetually unfolding behind the grand, glittering facade of medieval power, where the most potent and influential weapons were often found not on the bloody battlefield or in the political council chambers, but quietly simmering in the lady's private pantry, or subtly kneaded into a sweet and unassuming pastry. Having observed the discreet culinary tactics employed by noblewomen to influence affairs of the heart and dynastic success within their opulent, privileged spheres, your journey now moves to a perhaps less glamorous, certainly more rustic, yet equally significant and profoundly human aspect of medieval life: peasant and folk remedies. Imagine yourself stepping out of the grand castle halls and into a small, simple, thatched cottage, perhaps nestled amidst rolling, verdant fields, with a thin wisp of smoke curling lazily from its humble chimney. Inside, the air is thick with the earthy scent of drying herbs and wood smoke, and a village elder, perhaps a wise woman with keen, knowing eyes, or a cunning man with a lifetime of practical experience, dispenses advice and simple, homegrown concoctions. This knowledge comes not from meticulously copied scholarly texts found in monastic libraries, but from generations of vibrant oral tradition, passed down through whispers and practical demonstration, deeply rooted in a profound connection to nature's rhythms and the immediate environment. You see, for the vast majority of medieval people, the sophisticated exotic ingredients of courtly aphrodisiacs, like imported spices, rare animal parts, or alchemical tinctures were utterly unobtainable luxuries beyond their wildest dreams. Their world was one of constant scarcity, reliance on local resources, and the ingenious use of whatever the immediate land could provide. Yet the fundamental human desire for love, for companionship, for abundant fertility, and for enduring marital harmony was just as potent, if not more so, than in the nobility. For a peasant family, children meant labor for the fields, support in old age, and the very continuation of their lineage. So they turned to what they knew intimately: the common plants, familiar animals, and even everyday household items found directly around them, interpreting their natural properties through a deeply ingrained lens of folklore, local superstition, and that ever-present sympathetic magic. It's like discovering that your resourceful neighbor's beloved grandmother had a secret, highly effective recipe for a love potion using only ingredients plucked directly from her modest vegetable patch. Practical, deeply personal, and profoundly connected to the earth. Consider, for instance, the humble onion and its pungent companion, garlic. While your modern, more aesthetically driven mind might immediately conclude that their powerful aromas would make your breath less than enchanting for a romantic encounter by contemporary standards, in medieval folk belief, they were often, quite remarkably, considered potent aphrodisiacs. This belief stemmed from their pungent, warming properties, their ability to ostensibly stimulate blood flow and generate internal heat, and their robust grounding nature. A truly quirky tidbit from medieval folklore. Some traditions held the charming belief that sleeping with a particularly strong onion carefully placed under your pillow could inspire vivid dreams of your future true love, or that consuming copious amounts of garlic would make one exceptionally vigorous and passionately ardent. It's a rather direct, no-nonsense, and undeniably earthy approach to sparking passion, perhaps more effective for its perceived internal warmth and vitalizing properties than its actual romantic aroma. It certainly speaks to a less perfumed, more functional understanding of desire. While Eleanor Herman's Sex with Kings, naturally, and quite understandably, focuses almost exclusively on the intimate lives and desires of European royalty, it's crucial to remember that the underlying beliefs and pervasive practices regarding love, fertility, and remedies for both permeated all levels of medieval society, from the highest lord to the humblest serf. The societal and personal pressure to marry, and more importantly to produce children, was arguably even greater for peasants than for nobility, as it directly ensured the continuation of their vital labor force, the survival of their family line, and their economic security. You can vividly imagine a young peasant couple, nervous and hopeful before their simple village wedding, quietly seeking out the village-wise woman for a charm, a blessing, or a specific potent dish to ensure a fertile and prosperous union. This might involve a hearty stew made with readily available root vegetables, fortified with generous amounts of those very onions and garlic, prepared with specific intentions and whispered prayers. The unfortunate absence of extensive written records detailing the daily practices and beliefs of medieval peasants makes these stories harder to trace directly, but their widespread and enduring nature is powerfully implied by the rich tapestry of folklore and popular traditions that have survived, albeit often in fragments, to this very day. Michel Foucault's profound work, while often abstract and theoretical, reminds us that the regulation, understanding, and expression of desire is not just a top-down phenomenon dictated by elites or religious institutions, but is also powerfully shaped by popular culture, communal beliefs, and everyday grassroots practices. Folk remedies for love and fertility represent a localized, deeply ingrained, and often highly ingenious approach to managing human desire, reflecting deeply held community values, traditional knowledge, and practical adaptations, rather than just elite decrees or complex medical theories. You're observing how the universal human urge for connection, procreation, and intimacy found practical, culturally specific, and often incredibly resourceful expression in the lives of ordinary people, who were often far removed from the grand courtly spheres and the exotic indulgences of the nobility. Historians still engage in lively and nuanced debate about the true efficacy of these diverse folk remedies. Was it the actual chemical compounds present in the humble herbs and vegetables, the powerful placebo effect fueled by strong communal belief and the inherent hope of the individual, or simply the psychological impact of engaging in a ritual imbued with intention that brought about the desired results. Perhaps, as is often the case with human endeavors, it was a complex and dynamic combination of all three factors. You might ponder as you drift deeper into this historical reverie the sheer ingenuity, resilience, and deep-seated faith of medieval common folk, who found potent tools and profound meaning for their most fundamental desires, love, family, and future, within their immediate, often challenging environment. It's a humble, yet incredibly powerful testament to humanity's enduring quest for love, connection, and continuity, often found in the most unexpected and truly down-to-earth ingredients, seasoned with hope and tradition. As you gently drift further, perhaps you can almost distinctly smell the earthy aroma of onions and garlic, subtly simmering in a simple cottage hearth, whispering ancient tales of love and life from the forgotten, yet deeply resonant corners of history. From the humble, earthy aromas of peasant gardens and the bustling, often chaotic energy of royal feasts, your immersive journey through medieval aphrodisiacs now culminates in a truly fascinating, sometimes unsettling, but ultimately profound and enduring reflection: the paramount power of belief and the allure of taboo. Imagine the medieval mind grappling constantly with the unseen, mysterious forces of the world. Where nascent scientific understanding was rudimentary and deeply held faith, whether religious or superstitious, was not just important, but absolutely paramount, often dictating every aspect of daily life and understanding. In this unique historical context, the perceived efficacy of an aphrodisiac wasn't merely about its chemical ingredients or a rudimentary understanding of physiology. It was inextricably and profoundly intertwined with the fervent convictions of those who prepared it, the eager anticipation of those who consumed it, and the powerful societal narratives and ancient folklore that surrounded it. It's like realizing that the true magic wasn't always residing within the potion itself, bubbling in a glass flask, but rather in the elaborate, deeply compelling story that everyone involved fervently believed about it, giving it a power all its own. You see, in an era where superstition, religious doctrine, and age-old folk beliefs held immense, almost unchallenged sway over everyday life, anything that touched upon the intimate and often mysterious realm of human desire, love, and procreation was automatically imbued with significant, almost mystical power. This power was often perceived as dual-natured, both sacred, blessed by divine will for the continuation of life, and yet also potentially profane, bordering on forbidden magic or dangerous manipulation. If a particular food, a humble herb, a rare mineral, or even a bizarre animal part was believed by the collective consciousness to possess the genuine power to stir love, ignite passion, or enhance fertility, then that deeply held conviction itself became an incredibly potent force, capable of inducing a powerful and very real placebo effect. The human mind, thoroughly convinced of a remedy's efficacy and its promised outcome, could trigger very real, measurable physiological and psychological responses simply through the power of expectation. It's the timeless medieval equivalent of wearing your lucky socks for a crucial first date or a big job interview today. You might not consciously or rationally believe they will actually change the outcome, but a primal, hopeful part of you quietly believes they might. And that profound hope, that unwavering belief, can indeed make all the difference, subtly influencing your confidence and demeanor. Consider the intriguing and often perverse role of taboo itself in enhancing perceived aphrodisiac qualities. A truly quirky medieval tidbit that reveals the depth of this psychological allure. Sometimes the very fact that an ingredient was considered forbidden, incredibly rare, difficult to obtain, or even inherently dangerous or associated with dark practices might paradoxically enhance its perceived aphrodisiac qualities and desirability. The alluring thrill of the illicit, the inherent danger of transgressing a societal or religious boundary, could itself become a powerful stimulant, adding an intoxicating layer to the experience. Think of ingredients whispered about in hushed, fearful tones, perhaps associated with witchcraft, demonic pacts, or darker, forbidden arts. The inherent danger, profound mystery, or the sheer societal disapproval surrounding such a substance would amplify its psychological impact on the user, making it seem even more potent, more capable of achieving extraordinary, perhaps impossible, romantic results. It's the ultimate forbidden fruit paradox, where the very act of breaking a rule, of daring to step beyond accepted norms, becomes an integral part of the allure and the perceived power of the aphrodisiac. Eleanor Herman's Sex with Kings implicitly and explicitly showcases this powerful interplay of belief and perception. When a monarch, facing immense dynastic pressure to produce a male heir, to maintain a powerful political alliance through a passionate connection, or simply to satisfy personal desire, turn to a bizarre and often incredibly expensive concoction, like the rumored powdered unicorn horn, strange animal parts, or alchemically distilled essences, their own profound belief in its power, meticulously amplified by its exorbitant cost, its extreme rarity, and the secret ritual of its preparation, likely played an absolutely huge, if not primary role in any perceived success. It wasn't just the substance itself acting upon the body, it was the entire complex ritual, the financial sacrifice involved, the aura of secrecy, and the shared collective conviction within the court that they were engaging with something truly potent, something that must work. You can almost tangibly see the hopeful glint in their eyes, the nervous anticipation as they consume the potion, already anticipating the magical desired outcome simply because they believed it was entirely possible, indeed inevitable. Michel Foucault's seminal work, The History of Sexuality, is particularly relevant here, as it fundamentally explores how human desire is not a fixed, innate biological given, but is constantly constructed, interpreted, regulated, and indeed produced by societies through various discourses and power structures. In the medieval context, desire was profoundly shaped by rigid religious doctrine, evolving medical theory like humoralism, strict social hierarchy, and deeply ingrained folk belief. Aphrodisiacs, then, were not just simple chemical agents acting on the body. They were complex cultural artifacts, embodying a society's deepest anxieties about fertility and lineage, its fervent hopes for love and connection, and its evolving, often contradictory understandings of the body and its powerful urges. You're observing how a society actively created and defined its own reality of desire through collective belief, shared rituals, and the powerful narratives passed down through generations. Historians still widely debate the true mechanisms behind the effectiveness of many medieval aphrodisiacs, particularly those involving unusual or dangerous ingredients. Was it the actual identifiable chemical properties of the plants and substances that caused a physiological change? The powerful placebo effect stemming from widespread and unwavering belief? Or perhaps a complex combination of both, alongside the general physiological effects of rich food, intoxicating drink, and a festive, permissive atmosphere? The prevailing scholarly consensus often leans heavily towards acknowledging the significant and undeniable role of the placebo effect, powerfully augmented by the surrounding context of ritual, social expectation, and an intense, almost desperate hope for results. It's incredibly challenging, if not entirely impossible, to neatly disentangle the actual pharmacological effects from the immense psychological power of belief in a world so deeply steeped in magic, in superstition, and faith. You might ponder, as you slowly and gently drift out of this captivating historical dreamscape, how much of our own desires, our attractions, and our responses to things even today are shaped not just by pure biology, but by the powerful, often unseen forces of belief, expectation, and the pervasive cultural narratives that surround us. It's a profound and timeless reminder that sometimes, perhaps even most of the time, the most potent and transformative magic of all lies not in an external potion or a rare ingredient, but within the mysterious and boundless depths of the human mind itself. Having concluded our winding historical journey through the bizarre and undeniably fascinating world of medieval culinary aphrodisiacs, from the grand feasts of kings to the humble gardens of peasants, it's now time to bring our exploration full circle into the present day. You're now back in your comfortable chair, perhaps with a warm, comforting drink in hand, reflecting on the vast chronological chasm and, surprisingly, the persistent continuities that exist between the medieval quest for love and desire and our modern, scientifically driven understanding. What does all this historical strangeness, all this ancient lore, truly tell us about the ongoing interplay between modern science versus ancient belief. It's almost like switching from consulting a dusty, ancient herbal manuscript filled with charmingly naive drawings to poring over a sleek, digital, peer-reviewed medical journal, only to find intriguing echoes of those old beliefs, albeit in vastly transformed and often more subtle forms, still resonating in our contemporary world. You see, while medieval theories of humoral balance and sympathetic magic might seem utterly quaint or even alarmingly misguided to a rational modern mind, the fundamental, deeply ingrained human desire for love, for profound connection, for vibrant vitality, and for robust sexual health remains utterly unchanged. Today, we might indeed laugh dismissively at the notion of powdered unicorn horn as a potent love charm, but our supermarkets, pharmacies, and the vast expanse of the internet are still absolutely brimming with products marketed, either subtly or with jarring bluntness, with the promise of enhancing libido, improving sexual performance, or boosting fertility. Think for a moment of the ubiquitous ginseng supplements, the trendy maca powder, or even the more direct male enhancement pills advertised online and on late-night television. While some of these products may be backed by varying degrees of rigorous scientific research, many, consciously or unconsciously, often tap into the very same deep-seated hopes, anxieties, and primal desires that so powerfully fueled the medieval search for magical love potions and fertility charms. Consider, more specifically, the ongoing trajectory of modern scientific research into the actual, verifiable aphrodisiac properties of certain foods and compounds. A truly quirky and enlightening tidbit that bridges the historical gap. While modern science has, unsurprisingly, largely debunked the overtly magical or mystical effects attributed to many medieval ingredients, like sparrow brains or pigeon blood, thankfully, it has, nevertheless, found some fascinating and often surprising connections between certain foods and their potential indirect impact on mood, energy, or sexual function. For instance, dark chocolate, a universally beloved and indulgent treat, contains naturally occurring compounds like phenylethylamine, PEA, which is chemically associated with feelings of love and euphoria, and tryptophan, a crucial precursor to serotonin, a neurotransmitter linked to well-being. So, while it's certainly not a direct love potion in the medieval sense, it undoubtedly has genuine mood-enhancing effects that could contribute to a more receptive or romantic state of mind. Similarly, oysters, long heralded across cultures as potent aphrodisiacs, are indeed exceptionally rich in zinc, a vital mineral absolutely essential for testosterone production, sperm health, and overall sexual function. Thus, while medieval people might not have understood the precise biochemistry behind these effects, their astute anecdotal observations and enduring folk wisdom sometimes serendipitously stumbled upon genuine nutritional benefits that could indirectly support sexual health and contribute to a feeling of vitality. Our understanding of the powerful placebo effect has also come an incredibly long way from medieval times. Where medieval people often attributed the success of a remedy to the inherent magic of an ingredient, a divine blessing, or a powerful ritual, modern science now precisely recognizes the immense and measurable power of the human mind itself. If you firmly believe that a particular substance will make you feel more amorous, more confident, or more vigorous, your brain can indeed trigger a cascade of complex physiological and psychological responses that align directly with that expectation. This doesn't diminish the experience itself. It simply shifts the explanation from the mystical and supernatural to the fascinating and intricate mechanisms of neuroscience and psychology. It's a powerful and humbling reminder that belief, expectation, and intention remain profoundly potent forces in shaping our human experience, even in our highly rationalized, scientific world. The dramatic evolution of sexual health and well-being products in the modern era profoundly reflects this significant shift from ancient lore to rigorous laboratory science. Instead of relying on ground sparrow brains or dubious animal parts, we now have pharmaceutical marvels like Viagra or Cialis, developed through years of meticulous, rigorous scientific testing and clinical trials to address specific physiological mechanisms of erectile dysfunction. Yet, even with these incredible advancements in the accessibility of targeted medications, the vast global market for natural aphrodisiacs herbal supplements, and alternative remedies continues to thrive and expand. These products often subtly or explicitly draw on traditional knowledge, ancient symbolic associations, or anecdotal claims. This persistent phenomenon highlights a deep-seated and enduring human desire for quick fixes, for holistic or natural solutions, or simply for an alternative to conventional medicine, echoing the medieval quest for a magical, all-encompassing elixir. Historians, sociologists, and cultural anthropologists continue to actively explore how culture, societal norms, and prevailing beliefs profoundly shape our understanding of sexuality, health, illness, and what constitutes a legitimate remedy. The rich, complex story of medieval culinary aphrodisiacs serves as an invaluable case study, powerfully demonstrating how deeply intertwined scientific or proto-scientific thought, folk belief, religious doctrine, and societal pressures were in shaping intimate practices and personal well-being. It prompts us, as modern individuals, to critically consider how our own contemporary beliefs and behaviors, despite our immense scientific advancements, might still be subtly influenced by deeply embedded cultural narratives, ancient symbolic associations, and deeply ingrained, often unconscious, hopes. You might ponder, as you slowly emerge from this historical journey, how much of what we consume today, whether for health, pleasure, or performance, is truly about its precisely measured chemical properties, and how much is about the powerful, enduring stories we tell ourselves, and that society tells us about it. It's a continuous, dynamic conversation between the empirical and the experiential, between the sterile lab coat of the modern scientist and the earthy, wisdom-filled apron of the ancient herbalist. As our historical journey through the often bizarre and always fascinating world of medieval culinary aphrodisiacs has revealed, the fundamental human quest for love, passionate desire, and the vital continuation of fertility is profoundly woven into the intricate fabric of culture, deeply held belief, and, perhaps surprisingly, the very essence of cuisine itself. Now, with the echoes of ancient feasts and whispered secrets still lingering, let's turn our attention outwards to the intriguing and often overlooked aspects of cultural variations and the enduring legacies of these ancient practices. Imagine yourself for a moment as a seasoned cultural anthropologist, meticulously examining how diverse societies across vast stretches of time and geographical space have approached the same fundamental human desires, love, passion, and procreation, through vastly different, yet sometimes strikingly similar, culinary lenses. It's truly like comparing a collection of ancient recipes from distant, disparate lands and discovering common, recurring ingredients and shared symbolic intentions in the universal pursuit of passion. You see, while our primary focus throughout this exploration has been on the rich and often peculiar traditions of medieval Europe, the underlying concept of specific foods or substances possessing the power to enhance desire, attract a lover, or boost fertility is far from unique to that time or place. It is, in fact, a deeply universal human phenomenon, a thread that can be traced through almost every known culture and civilization throughout recorded history. From the vibrant, warming spices and complex herbal preparations of ancient India, to the exotic, often symbolic ingredients favored in traditional Chinese medicine and cuisine, from the potent roots, barks, and herbs utilized in various African tribal traditions, to the ceremonial drinks and plants used by indigenous peoples of the pre-Columbian Americas. The belief in culinary aphrodisiacs transcends geographical and temporal boundaries with remarkable consistency. This widespread, almost instinctive nature strongly suggests a fundamental human impulse to seek some form of control or enhancement over the most intimate and unpredictable matters of the heart and body, utilizing whatever natural resources are available within their environment. Consider, for example, the incredibly common thread woven through many cultures' aphrodisiac lore, the pervasive belief in the enhanced power of rare or exotic ingredients. A truly quirky yet universal tidbit, in numerous cultures, substances that were exceptionally difficult to obtain, incredibly expensive, or originated from distant, whilst mysterious lands were almost automatically imbued with greater potency and prestige, including elevated aphrodisiac qualities. This isn't just a peculiar medieval European phenomenon, it's a recurring motif seen globally. Think of the tragic story of rhino horn in some Asian traditions, often falsely believed to be a powerful aphrodisiac or cure-all, contributing devastatingly to the endangerment of rhino populations. Or consider saffron, the world's most expensive spice, which has been highly valued in various ancient cuisines across continents for its perceived mystical and aphrodisiac properties, from Persia to Rome. The inherent allure of the inaccessible, the allure of the precious, or the mystique of the unknown, seems to universally enhance an ingredient's perceived potency, a testament to the profound psychological power of rarity and exclusivity over human desires. Eleanor Herman's broad and meticulously researched historical work, while primarily focusing on the intimate lives of European royalty, implicitly yet powerfully touches upon how various global cultures and historical periods contributed to the rich and diverse pool of aphrodisiac knowledge. The European courts, through their extensive trade networks, diplomatic exchanges, and sometimes violent conquests, would have inevitably encountered a fascinating array of ingredients and deeply held beliefs originating from the sophisticated Byzantine Empire, the scientifically advanced Islamic world, and even further east along the ancient Silk Road routes. This dynamic and continuous cultural exchange meant that aphrodisiac lore was far from static or isolated. It was a constantly evolving, vibrant tapestry woven from countless threads originating in diverse lands and belief systems. You can vividly imagine scholarly monks in dusty European monasteries meticulously translating ancient Arabic medical texts, or intrepid merchants returning from daring voyages, bringing back not just exotic goods for sale, but also tantalizing whispers of exotic love charms and potent fertility secrets from far-off, mysterious lands, all subtly enriching and transforming local European practices. Michel Foucault's The History of Sexuality and the broader field of cultural studies provides a crucial theoretical framework that helps us fundamentally understand that while the biological desire for sex and procreation is indeed a universal human given, the vastly different ways societies express, regulate, interpret, and attempt to influence this desire are incredibly diverse and culturally specific. Aphrodisiacs then become a truly fascinating and often telling window into these profound cultural variations. They reveal what a particular society valued most, e.g. fertility, pleasure, fidelity, what they feared, e.g. impotence, barrenness, infidelity, and how they fundamentally perceive the complex relationship between the human body, the natural world, and the elusive forces of desire itself. You're witnessing how powerful cultural narratives, shared beliefs, and historical circumstances actively shape and color our biological realities, creating a myriad of distinct approaches to the same fundamental human experience. The enduring legacy of these ancient beliefs and practices is surprisingly and compellingly evident in modern times, persisting despite centuries of scientific advancements and changing societal norms. Despite laboratories full of advanced pharmaceuticals and a much deeper understanding of human biology, many traditional aphrodisiacs continue to be incredibly popular, often consumed out of deep-seated cultural habit, their symbolic meaning, or a lingering, perhaps unconscious belief in their efficacy. Whether it's the almost ritualistic sharing of chocolate on Valentine's Day as a gesture of love, the consumption of oysters as a quintessential romantic delicacy, or the deliberate incorporation of warming spices like chili or ginger into a romantic meal, these contemporary practices are direct, echoing descendants of the ancient quest for culinary passion. Historians and anthropologists continue to actively explore and debate how and why these traditions persist with such tenacity, even when direct scientific evidence for their claimed effects is often lacking. Is it purely cultural inertia, a comfortable adherence to tradition, or does the enduring power of shared belief and collective intention continue to exert its profound influence on our most intimate experiences? You might ponder, as you reflect on this final chapter of our journey, how much of our own romantic rituals, our intimate customs, and even our modern dietary choices are still subtly shaped by an unconscious echo of ancient beliefs and practices, implicitly connecting us to a long, continuous, and endlessly fascinating human story of love, desire, and the intricate relationship we share with the food we eat. Having journeyed extensively from the opulent medieval courts to the intricate nuances of modern scientific understanding, and having explored the fascinating, often surprising, enduring legacies of ancient practices across diverse cultures, our final stop brings us squarely into the present moment, poised to contemplate the future, modern interpretations, and the evolving future of culinary desire. You're now standing at a bustling, vibrant intersection of deep history, cutting-edge science, and the ever-evolving, infinitely complex human experience, contemplating how ancient longings for love and connection are expressed, pursued, and explored in today's technologically advanced world, and what tomorrow might hold for these fundamental aspects of human nature. It's truly like gazing intently into a culinary crystal ball, but one that is richly seasoned with millennia of human desire, curiosity, and persistent hope. You see, while we, in the 21st century, no longer rely on the rather unappetizing notion of pigeon blood, or the wildly expensive and ethically dubious powdered unicorn horn to stir affections, the contemporary global market for foods, dietary supplements, and even specialized beverages that claim to enhance desire, boost libido, or improve sexual vitality is undeniably booming. This phenomenon isn't solely about pharmaceutical breakthroughs like those for erectile dysfunction. It's also profoundly influenced by a growing, widespread interest in functional foods and a more holistic, integrative approach to overall health and well-being, where diet is increasingly recognized as playing a crucial role in every aspect of life, including intimate relationships. This burgeoning trend directly echoes the medieval belief that food profoundly influences both the body and the spirit, but now it's filtered through a sophisticated lens of nutritional science, biochemistry, and highly effective wellness marketing. Consider, for example, the pervasive rise of superfoods explicitly marketed for their vitality-boosting, energy-enhancing, or even directly libido-stimulating properties. A truly quirky and insightful modern parallel to our medieval explorations. Ingredients like maca root, a Peruvian native often touted as a natural libido enhancer and adaptogen, or ginseng, a revered root long used in traditional Asian medicine for its purported benefits in energy, virility, and overall vitality, are now widely available in sleek packaging in health food stores, online retail, and even mainstream supermarkets across the globe. While the rigorous scientific evidence for their direct, immediate aphrodisiac effects can often be mixed, inconsistent, or limited, their immense popularity rests on a powerful blend of long-standing traditional lore, compelling anecdotal experiences shared across communities, and aggressive modern marketing that expertly plays on those very same ancient, deep-seated human desires for enhanced performance and passion. It's the 21st century equivalent of actively seeking out that rare, potent herb or mysterious root. But now it's conveniently freeze-dried, pulverized, encapsulated, and elegantly packaged for mass consumption. Eleanor Herman's historical insights into humanity's enduring desires for control over love, affection, and fertility continue to resonate with remarkable clarity in our present age. Modern society, despite its apparent openness, its advancements in sexual education, and its technological prowess, still grapples with persistent anxieties about sexual performance, the complexities of fertility, and the challenges of maintaining passionate romantic connection in an increasingly fast-paced world. This enduring human vulnerability, this universal longing, creates a perpetual and incredibly lucrative market for solutions. Whether those solutions originate from dusty ancient texts, cutting-edge scientific laboratories, or the latest ephemeral wellness trends and social media fads, you can clearly see how the fundamental human need for connection, for intimate expression, and for procreation transcends even the most revolutionary technological advancements, consistently manifesting in new, yet fundamentally familiar ways across generations. Michel Foucault's observations on how sexuality is meticulously constructed, understood, and regulated by society are perhaps more relevant and insightful than ever in this modern context. In the contemporary era, information about desire, its norms, its perceived deficiencies, and its potential enhancement is disseminated at an unprecedented speed and scale through global media, ubiquitous social platforms, and incredibly sophisticated advertising campaigns. This pervasive flow of information creates new, constantly evolving narratives around what constitutes normal desire, optimal performance, and the specific foods, supplements, or lifestyle choices that can supposedly help individuals achieve them. We are constantly bombarded with messages, often implicit, about what our bodies should be capable of, what our relationships should feel like, and how our intimate lives should ideally unfold, leading many to actively seek culinary or supplemental aids to bridge any perceived gap. You're witnessing a dynamic and complex interplay where societal pressures, cultural trends, and technological reach converge to create an ever-evolving landscape of human desire and its pursuit. Looking ahead, the future of culinary desire is likely to be a truly fascinating and intricate blend of ancient, perhaps rediscovered wisdom and genuinely cutting-edge science. As scientific research into areas like the gut microbiome's influence on mood and hormones, the intricate complexities of neurochemistry, and personalized nutrition advances at an accelerating pace, we might genuinely uncover scientifically validated, precise links between specific dietary patterns and libido, or between certain nutrients and sexual well-being, that go far beyond historical speculation or anecdotal evidence. Perhaps the aphrodisiacs of the future will be highly personalized dietary plans, meticulously tailored to an individual's unique biochemistry and genetic makeup, or even specific strains of designer probiotics engineered to optimize hormonal balance and emotional well-being. Yet even with these astonishing scientific possibilities, it's equally likely, perhaps even certain, that the profound symbolic power of certain foods, their deep cultural associations, the inherent romance of a shared meal, and the enduring human belief in love's magic will continue to play a significant and irreplaceable role. The communal act of sharing a thoughtfully prepared romantic meal, the ritual of choosing special, perhaps historically resonant ingredients, and the powerful, unspoken expectation of intimacy and connection will always carry an immense psychological and emotional weight, regardless of the latest scientific discovery or technological innovation. Historians, cultural anthropologists, and futurists alike will continue to ponder this fascinating, timeless intersection of food, desire, and belief. Will we ever truly decouple the experience of desire from the belief in what we consume, or the cultural stories we tell ourselves about it? Or is the magic always in some fundamental and undeniable part within the mind of the beholder, just as it was for the medieval lover secretly consuming spiced wine or a potent fig? It's a continuous, evolving journey into the very depths of the human heart, one that transcends the boundaries of time and remains forever intertwined with the food on our tables and the desires that stir within us. As the last echoes of our journey through history's culinary desires gently fade, and the vibrant tapestry of medieval feasts, humble peasant remedies, and even modern scientific quests softly recedes, we find ourselves drifting toward a quiet conclusion. The intriguing world of aphrodisiacs, from the bizarre to the scientifically plausible, ultimately whispers a timeless truth. The human heart, in its yearning for connection, passion, and the continuation of life, has always sought solace and strength, often finding it in the most unexpected of places, the very food we share. Take a moment now to breathe, to simply let the rich aromas of ancient spices and sweet honey, the distant clinking of medieval goblets, and the quiet hum of modern laboratories gently dissipate from your mind's eye. There is no need for grand revelations or definitive answers, only the soft understanding that weaves through the centuries. Whether it was a monarch's desperate plea for an heir or a young couple's hopeful gaze across a humble table, the desire for love in all its forms has always been intimately intertwined with the sustenance that graces our lives. So as you settle deeper into the present moment, allow the final images to soften like mist over a medieval garden at dawn. The quest for culinary desire in its myriad forms reminds us that the most potent magic often lies not in exotic ingredients or complex alchemical formulas, but in the enduring power of shared meals, whispered intentions, and the quiet, unwavering belief in the mysterious, beautiful forces that bind us all. And with that, our journey, a testament to humanity's timeless heart, gently concludes, leaving you with a sense of peace and a quiet appreciation for the enduring magic of connection.